Chapter 71, The Second Test. Whose mantis fist is that? The deputy cult leader cried, eyes wide. He had heard of the mantis fist, a martial art that imitates the praying mantis. It's a martial art that imitates the praying mantis, not one that turns you into a praying mantis. To ensure this test met his expected standards, he had repeatedly run through the scenario and even had several quick-witted high-ranking members of the sect try it out. He confirmed that apart from the standard answer he provided, there was absolutely no other solution. Now 2 answers had suddenly appeared that deviated from his standard, and he could not accept it. The cult leader, however, took it in stride. Look at it from another angle. He merely glanced at a few mantises and deduced the mantis fist. Even the generals of Jin in history didn't possess any real martial talent. This shows that this Liu Yang has extraordinarily high martial aptitude. He eventually reached the profound realm of entering the Tao through martial arts, turning technique into a kind of spell. A genius like that comes along only once in a lifetime. The deputy cult leader was momentarily stunned. Turning to the very serious cult leader, he asked, "Are you serious?" In his heart, the cult leader thought, "Of course I made that up. Truth be told, I don't even understand how one goes from being human to a mantis, but as the cult leader, I cannot show my ignorance before my subordinates." He nodded and replied, "Of course I'm serious." After the cult leader's words, the deputy cult leader felt a bit better. Since this was a once-in-a-lifetime genius, stumbling upon the solution by accident was only natural. It was barely acceptable. Everyone who can pass has passed. That concludes the first test, the deputy cult leader announced. Tens of thousands of images appeared on the water's surface, each recording everyone's performance. Only a few had gleaned perseverance from the spider, and only a very few had learned strategy from the mantis. Most, however, had been defeated in the cave, becoming deserters who were later killed by Liang state soldiers amid the chaos of war, dying without a name, with those soldiers never knowing how spirited they once were. The second test begins. The second test is for the examiner to sincerely decide to keep you. That sentence echoed in everyone's mind. They forgot about the details and only remembered that they must find a way to pass the second test. Yan Wangsun's head was a bit spinning. He had no recollection of what happened before, only a vague memory of a rather familiar person asking where he was from, to which he replied that he was from Huangyueching. "I'm Yan Wangsun. I'm now applying for a position at Luodi Jin Xian Shanghui, and the interview requires that you do not disclose the interview questions to anyone," he recited, gathering the information he currently had. Even if it weren't required, Yan Wangsun would never reveal the interview questions to others. It would only help them while doing him no favors. Yan Wangsun noticed he was seated at the first spot, with a big man in a Confucian robe sitting next to him. "I'm Mangu. What's your name?" the man said. Yan Wangsun remained silent. After all, the examiner was calling his name. As soon as he entered the room, Yan Wangsun noticed a wad of paper at his feet. He casually tossed it into the trash can and then prepared for the interview. The examiner was rather chubby, his clothes looking haphazard, and he always sported a smile. "Yan Wangsun, right? Now, go to the market and see if you can find any place selling potatoes." Obediently, Yan Wangsun left. He wandered around the market and found only one shop selling potatoes. When he returned, he simply said, "There is." The chubby examiner then asked, "How many potatoes?" With no other choice, Yan Wangsun ran out again. On his return, he said, "There are 80 jin of potatoes." "And the price?" Inwardly, Yan Wangsun cursed, "You fatso, why didn't you mention that earlier?" He ran out a third time. On his return, he reported, 3 won per jin. "How's the quality? Does it match the price?" Suppressing his anger and as casually as if he were walking his dog, Yan Wangsun ran out a 4th time to check the potatoes. "The quality is average, about 3 or 4 won per jin. The price is set low." The chubby examiner smiled and said, "You are eliminated." "On what grounds?" Yan Wangsun shouted angrily. He had been sent out 4 times, each time running back and forth, working hard all day, and now you tell me I failed? What a joke. The examiner spread his hands. "For such a trivial matter as asking about potatoes, you ran out 4 times. How can I trust you with this job? Then why didn't you ask all the questions at once?" Shaking his head, the examiner replied, "It's because you didn't do your work thoroughly that you can't blame me for not asking everything. Young man, in work you must learn to guess your superior's true intentions. Bah, you think you're the emperor, expecting us to read your mind." The chubby examiner wasn't angry either. "Even though you failed, you may still stay." Yan Wangsun looked at the examiner suspiciously, worried he was being played again. "Really? Do you remember that wad of paper you picked up as soon as you entered the room? That was something I deliberately threw on the floor to see who would pick it up." Delighted, Yan Wangsun thought, could this be a test of my responsibility and observation? Since we're short of someone to handle cleaning, you'll stay on to take care of housekeeping. Yan Wangsun. He really wanted to curse but held his tongue. In any case, being allowed to stay meant he had passed the test, and that was a good thing. Next, the chubby examiner shouted. Manga then walked into the room. Seeing his honest, simple demeanor, Yan Wangsun looked at him with a bit of disdain, thinking that this guy would be treated the same way as someone to be toyed with by the examiner. Go and check if there's any place selling potatoes in the market. The examiner repeated the same question. Manga simply replied with an "oh" and left, returning only after more than 10 minutes. There's an old man in the market pushing a cart selling potatoes. He has 80 jin of potatoes, priced at 3 won per jin. The quality matches the price. The old man even said that if you buy in bulk, the price could drop by 10%. Manga's answer was extremely detailed, even covering questions the chubby examiner hadn't thought to ask. Yan Wangsun, who stood by, was dumbfounded. Don't be fooled by Manga's burly appearance. In fact, he was a sensitive and thoughtful person who learned humbly, especially from Lu Yang and Meng Jingzhou. From the current situation, it was clear that there was still a long way to go before graduation. Congratulations, you're staying. See? What did I tell you? Mango is a promising talent, isn't he? The deputy cult leader said happily, pleased that Manga had once again passed the test. It proved that his own approach in setting the test was correct. The others managed to answer the examiner's 4 questions after running back and forth twice, a performance that barely counted as acceptable. Only Manga perfectly matched his expectations. The cult leader nodded. It seems the second test is about whether you are thorough in your work and capable of thinking on behalf of your superior. In the demonic way, one must work very cautiously, leaving no trace so that the righteous have no leverage. Furthermore, only by considering your superior's needs can you show potential for advancement and earn promotion from the higher-ups. It was for all these reasons that the deputy cult leader designed the second test. This time, there should be no other method, he said with a self-satisfied smile. The cult leader said nothing, casting his gaze toward the 2 individuals who had excelled in the first test. His intuition told him that perhaps there were other methods after all. Chapter 72, Sincere Intention. The second test is to have the examiner sincerely keep me? Meng Jingzhou read the past condition in his mind once again. What a strange test, it doesn't sound too hard. But where am I now? Meng Jingzhou sat on a row of benches. There were 4 people in front of him and 5 behind him, 10 in all, and he was right in the middle. Oh, so I'm applying for a position at a business association. In his mind, the setting taught to him by Buxiao Jiao flashed by. Meng Jingzhou looked at the pristine white wall opposite him. Unconsciously, his right hand moved, his middle and ring fingers curling. Nothing came out. Why did I make such a weird gesture? Puzzled, Meng Jingzhou thought, as he did not recall having such a habit. Forget it, just focus on the interview. He noticed that after the first person entered the examiner's room, that person hurriedly ran out and then rushed back in, going back and forth 3 or 4 times. With enthusiasm, Meng Jingzhou called out, "Hey, brother, what are you running for? Is the examiner testing your running speed? Then I suggest you change your shoes. The quality of your shoes really affects your speed. And your starting posture matters too. Crouch down, put both hands on the ground, arch your body. That way you'll run the fastest. Trust me, I've got plenty of experience." The man glanced at Meng Jingzhou as if he were an idiot, ignored him, and ran out to check on the quality of the potatoes. The rules were very clear. Candidates were not allowed to disclose the questions to one another. The first person, the second, the third, the fourth each ran about diligently, and naturally, none of them passed. Whether they passed or not, they disappeared after the interview ended, so that those who came later couldn't tell if making more trips or fewer trips was the way to pass. Next, Meng Jingzhou. The chubby examiner called from inside. Coming, Meng Jingzhou replied, walking in with a lively air. As usual, the chubby examiner smiled and asked, "Meng Jingzhou, go to the market and see if there's any seller of potatoes." Meng Jingzhou did nothing. The examiner, thinking he hadn't been clear, repeated the question word for word. This time, Meng Jingzhou spoke, "Why?" "What do you mean, why?" The chubby examiner replied, unable to follow his line of thought. "I mean, why do I need to go to the market to check if there's anyone selling potatoes? Do you know what we're doing right now?" "We're in an interview," the chubby examiner answered matter-of-factly. "Exactly, you just said it. This is an interview, not a job for running errands. Besides, didn't you ask this very question to the previous 4 people? You asked the question 4 times already, aren't you satisfied? Do you want to ask it a 5th time?" The chubby examiner patiently said, "That is the test question." Meng Jingzhou merely responded with an "oh," obediently went to the market and then returned saying, "There are sellers of potatoes." "How many potatoes?" Not knowing the answer, Meng Jingzhou got up to leave. The chubby examiner gave a slight cold smile and said, "You little brat, you talk too much. If you come back for another round, I'll declare you failed." Who would have thought that when Meng Jingzhou opened the door, there was an old man standing there? Meng Jingzhou asked the old man, "How many jin of potatoes are in your cart?" The old man replied, 80 jin. Meng Jingzhou turned back and said, "He said there are 80 jin of potatoes. Aren't you going to ask how much 1 jin costs?" The chubby examiner opened his mouth, but somehow he couldn't bring himself to ask, "How much is 1 jin of potatoes?" Even if he had asked, the old man would have answered immediately. "Who the hell asks that? Why did you call the potato seller over here?" the chubby examiner roared. "How are we supposed to conduct the test now?" Meng Jingzhou spread his hands and explained, "I asked him if several people had run over to ask about the potatoes, and the old man complained to me that a bunch of people ran over, took a look at his potatoes, then ran back. Then they ran over to ask how many jin of potatoes he had, ran back again, and then ran over to ask how much 1 jin costs, only asking and not buying. I said, 'Do you want to meet the real culprit behind all this? Ask without buying nonsense.' He said he did, so I brought him over." The chubby examiner was left speechless. What now? No one had told him he'd encounter such a situation. Remembering Meng Jingzhou's blatant disrespect, the chubby examiner, in a sudden fit, shouted, "If you can't figure out my true intention, you'll be eliminated." Before the examiner could finish, Meng Jingzhou kicked him and retorted, "Bullshit superior's intent, take that for your fat face." With that, Meng Jingzhou ran out. The chubby examiner slammed his hand on the table until it shattered and shouted, "You, stop right there." The examiner had sincerely intended to keep Meng Jingzhou, and in doing so, Meng Jingzhou passed the test. The deputy cult leader rubbed his temples in pain. What kind of strange method for passing is this? He had stipulated that the examiner must sincerely choose to keep the interviewees, out of concern that some candidates might take shortcuts by bribing the examiner. He thought his rules were detailed enough, yet he hadn't expected such an unforeseen method of passing. Not only did the examiner sincerely intend to keep Meng Jingzhou, he also sincerely intended to tear him apart. How did this kid's brain even form like that, or is it that I never grew a brain? Undying Immortal, give me an answer. The deputy cult leader muttered, praying to the immortal in hopes of a response. The cult leader interrupted, "If only the immortal could hear what you're saying." The deputy cult leader didn't think the cult leader was being irreverent. He knew the cult leader was the most devout believer in Buxiao Jiao. He sighed and said, "How many times have we tried, every time failing, never being able to resurrect the undying immortal? If we could resurrect him, then neither the great Xia dynasty nor the righteous would stand a chance against him. Only with blood as a sacrifice can we resurrect the undying immortal." The two didn't dwell on the topic further. The deputy cult leader then asked, "What do you think of this, Meng Jingzhou?" The cult leader clicked his tongue in amazement and said, "Unconventional, now that's talent." In his heart, the cult leader thought how fortunate he was not to have agreed with the deputy cult leader's claim that there would be no other way to pass the test. Otherwise, where would he have left his face as cult leader? Is this kid considered talent too? Of course. I think our Buxiao cult needs people whose way of thinking is different from the norm. Look at Wendaozong of the Orthodox. Why have they endured through the ages? I've summed up a few reasons, and the most important is that they possess wisdom beyond what ordinary people can understand. The deputy cult leader's lips twitched. He thought, the cult leader truly lives up to his title, speaking about lunatics in such a refreshingly transcendent way. The cult leader continued, "Perhaps this guy named Meng Jingzhou can become the backbone of our Buxiao cult, even a pillar." Speaking of Meng Jingzhou, what about that guy who stood out in the first test? Wasn't he called Lu Yang? How did he perform? Have the examiner sincerely keep me? Lu Yang mused, "What's so hard about that? Just give the examiner a good kick, better yet spit a mouthful of saliva to really set him off. Then he won't just keep me as a person, he might even want to keep my life. But that method is too barbaric. Only a brute like Meng Jingzhou would use such tactics. I'm a civilized person, I can't stoop to his level." Chapter 73, The Three Demonic Masters. Among the 10 interviewees, Lu Yang was ranked 6th. He noticed that those ahead of him would dash into the examiner's room and immediately run out, sprinting out as if in a 100-meter dash, then running back and forth several times. This is such a strange test. Lu Yang was not one to sit still. Although the rules stated that candidates were not allowed to ask about the interview content, they never said anything about going out to take a look. Lu Yang asked a nearby demonic cultivator who had his eyes closed in meditation, "Do you want to go outside and check it out?" The demonic cultivator glanced at Lu Yang with scorn, letting out a cold smile before saying nothing. After all, how could demonic cultivators act together? He must be trying to trick him. "No way, I'm not going." Seeing no answer from his companion, Lu Yang felt a twinge of pity. He was quite handsome, though unfortunately a bit hard of hearing. He wondered what would happen when, during the interview, the examiner's words went unheard by that fellow. With no one else engaging him, Lu Yang stepped outside. Outside was a bustling market, vendors selling fruits, eggs, pork. All the common foods could be found here, with merchants either setting up stalls or pushing small carts while shouting out their wares. "Give me an apple." Lu Yang bought an apple, quickly wiped it off, and began eating while observing the other interviewees' behavior. Coincidentally, the third candidate ran out to see if there were any potato sellers. When he saw that there were, he immediately went back to report to the examiner. In less than 3 minutes, the third candidate ran out again to ask an old man selling potatoes about the price per gene and the total weight available. 3 minutes later, it was still the third candidate who came out to inspect the quality of the potatoes. Then came the fourth candidate. His process was almost identical to that of the third, the only difference being that he made 4 trips instead of 3. Clearly, he wasn't as quick-witted as the third. Lu Yang munched on his apple, deep in thought. Next, Feng Hao, the chubby examiner, called. Feng Hao was the very person whom Lu Yang had earlier asked if he wanted to go out together. "Here I come." Surprisingly, Feng Hao wasn't mute. "You go to the market and see if there's anyone selling potatoes," the chubby examiner repeated his usual trick. Feng Hao dashed out in a hurry, and it took quite a while before he returned, leaving the chubby examiner rather puzzled. Just as the examiner's impatience was mounting, Feng Hao returned and said, "There's no one selling potatoes in the market." "Potatoes? How many, Jean?" "Wait, what did you say? There's nothing selling potatoes?" Feng Hao couldn't understand why the chubby examiner was reacting so strongly. Nodding, he replied, "That's right, I ran around the market twice and made sure that no one was selling potatoes." "This is impossible." The chubby examiner thought Feng Hao was lying, so he hurriedly ran out and Feng Hao followed right behind him. As soon as the examiner stepped out, he saw Lu Yang pushing a cart loaded with potatoes. The cart had "potatoes not for sale" written on it. Nearby, the old man who was originally supposed to be selling potatoes was happily counting his silver coins. As soon as Lu Yang saw the examiner, he bolted while pushing the cart. The examiner, infuriated, shouted, "You stop right there." Lu Yang passed the test. "Unbelievable," roared the deputy cult leader in anger, his domineering and fearsome aura radiating outward. The entire grand hall trembled and ripples spread across the pool, obscuring the view of the scene. His meticulously designed test had been riddled with loopholes. In front of these two disasters, it was nothing short of a disgrace. The cult leader calmly stepped in to suppress the deputy's aura. After all, it had taken considerable effort to build this grand hall in a concealed spot. If the righteous were to find out about this mess, it would be an utter farce. Don't get angry so easily. These people have forgotten everything. They only remember devising any means possible to pass. We are the demonic cult. Our principles revolve around killing and resurrecting the undying immortal. How can we be killing over such trivial matters? Moreover, these two have taken an unconventional approach. They are rare talents. Our Bushio cult has never made any significant breakthroughs, and I feel these two represent our hope. The deputy cult leader, however, felt that the Bushio cult had no hope left. The cult leader, his tone laced with excitement, remarked, "Come to think of it, that guy named Mangdu, along with Meng Jingzhou and Lu Yang, they're all from Yanjiangjun, aren't they? Who would have thought that the little Yanjiangjun could produce 3 talents? It's fair to call them the 3 demonic masters. With these 3 in our cult, it's like adding wings to a tiger." The deputy cult leader muttered under his breath, "Adding wings to a tiger? Isn't that just like Xianxia? And Xianxia can't even beat the righteous." The cult leader glared at him, "Show some culture and shut your mouth." The deputy cult leader obediently fell silent. Yanjiang branch. 11 deacons strained every ounce of energy to maintain the great formation while nearly 100 demonic cultivators stood frozen in place, eyes glazed, their wits lost as their thoughts took over their bodies to undergo the test. The process of sustaining the formation was exceedingly dull. As the deacons munched on their cheery gaining pills, they began chatting. "Qin Yuanhao's been missing for so long, he's probably dead by now." "Definitely dead. It's just a matter of how he died. I've been saying it for ages, this guy was always scheming and calculating, thinking he had everything under control. Sooner or later he'd anger his enemies, and on a dark, windy night they'd finish him off. Qin Yuanhao's corpse still hasn't been found. Was he killed by his enemies? What else? Could it be that a benefactor repaid his kindness with betrayal? In our line of work, there are no benefactors. I even heard that the night before he died, Qin Yuanhao was off cavorting at a brothel with Wang Dazue. The deacons laughed softly among themselves, their chuckles rising and falling. Just as Qin Yuanhao had hoped, Wang Dazue went around bragging about how he and Qin Yuanhao were invincible, how they battled through the brothel, coming in and out 7 times. And then Qin Yuanhao died. Thus, a rumor spread throughout the Yanjiang branch that Qin Yuanhao had perished from exhaustion. One could imagine that even in the realm of the dead, Qin Yuanhao would finally be at peace. I wonder how many of this batch will pass the test. Despite the many who participated in the initiation ceremony, among those who successfully passed the test and joined the cult, it's rare 1 in 10 is considered good enough. They all become deacons only after having experienced similar tests and knowing just how difficult they are. This time, with the deputy cult leader personally presiding, the difficulty was undoubtedly among the highest of all the tests. In the end, only the branch leader will know the results. The 11 looked toward the meditating branch leader. The branch leader was also using the Great Formation to enter the mysterious space set up by Bushio cult. All the branch leaders could see the performance of their own branches within that space. The outstanding performances of Lu Yang and the other two had the branch leader's face bloom like a chrysanthemum in joy. But he wore a mask, no one could see how pleased he truly was. He murmured excitedly to himself, if these three not only pass the test but also receive high praise from above, the year-end performance of the Yanjiang branch will definitely be top-notch. With a little maneuvering to boost my cultivation, maybe next year I can be transferred to a wealthier region as a branch leader, or perhaps even be directly promoted to hall master. After the 3 tests, either the deputy cult leader or the cult leader would give a commendation to those new members who performed exceptionally, like Qin Yuanhao, who was described as having demonic essence to the bone. The branch leader was convinced that the evaluation for Lu Yang and his 2 companions would far surpass Qin Yuanhao's. It was obvious from their demeanor they were not ordinary people. Chapter 74, Righteous Undercover. We're back again. Lu Yang opened his eyes and found that he had returned to the mysterious white space. Around him were many familiar faces: Meng Jingzhou, Mangu, Qi Shulong, Shen Jini, and so on. Only 10 people from the Yanjiang branch had managed to pass the first 2 tests, and Lu Yang recognized only half of them. Half had not even had their personal information tricked when someone was impersonating the examiner. Slowly, memories of the first 2 tests came back. Remember the mantis fist in the first test and the potato cart in the second. It seems that the Bushio cult's tests aren't so hard after all, Lu Yang thought. He believed his approach was standard, anyone with a brain could do it. I think so too, Meng Jingzhou agreed. In the first test, you just get bitten by a spider, and in the second, you just punch that fat guy. Lu Yang looked at Meng Jingzhou in slight surprise. Huh? How come our methods for passing are different? With a confident wave of his hand, Meng Jingzhou replied, need I ask? Mine is clearly the standard answer, and yours was just by accident. Lu Yang scoffed at his confidence. Ridiculous. In the first test, I grasped the essence of the mantis fist to show my martial prowess. What did your first test show? Good luck? That even the Bushio cult members can see it? Clearly, mine is the standard answer. I advise you to face reality, Meng Jingzhou retorted. Watching the two argue heatedly, Manga silently recalled his own way of passing. In the first test, he learned perseverance from the spider and the value of planning before acting from the mantis. In the second test, he practiced putting himself in others' shoes and being thorough. Come to think of it, my method is rather ordinary. It seems that Brother Lu's and Brother Meng's methods are the correct ones, but I wonder which is the best, Manga muttered, feeling he had learned something new. After a long, fruitless quarrel between Lu Yang and Meng Jingzhou, it was Mangu, the clear-headed observer, who finally ended their debate. Is it possible that both of your methods are correct? The demonic cult values wild, unrestrained actions. There isn't just one correct answer. In fact, any method that lets you pass is acceptable. Lu Yang and Meng Jingzhou looked at Mangu in surprise, realizing that what he said made a lot of sense. I never expected the Bushio cult's test to be this open-ended. Lu Yang marveled, and Meng Jingzhou nodded in agreement. By the way, we've only passed the first 2 tests. How have we returned here? Where's the third test? Only then did the 3 of them remember the real matter at hand. The deputy cult leader's figure reappeared in the sky, holding a palm-sized sphere with a crack running down its center. Taking a step in midair, the mysterious white space immediately transformed. Around him, buildings sprang up in orderly rows like a tidal wave: city walls, palaces, courtyard pavilions, towering mountains, rivers flowing through the entire city, hurrying pedestrians, shouting vendors, and cultivators capable of moving mountains and seas. It was like a grand immortal city. Then, the deputy cult leader divided everyone by branch. The 10 members of the Yanjiang branch were gathered in a small building with a view of the outside scenery. A voice, void of any emotion, resounded in their ears. Everyone, congratulations on passing the first 2 tests. Now, we will begin the third test. This is a simulated city. Soon, I will unleash your true nature. Your inner self will make you believe this is the real world, and you will do the wicked things you truly desire. The greater the destruction, the higher our evaluation of you. You have 1 day and 1 night. After these words, the deputy cult leader raised the sphere in his hand. The sphere split open along a crack, revealing a black pupil. It wasn't a sphere at all, it was a gigantic eye. The giant eye opened, and an eerie purple light enveloped the entire city. The deputy cult leader's consciousness returned to headquarters, still holding the giant eye. As expected of the celestial eye refined by the undying immortal. The human heart is so complex, only a celestial treasure can unleash one's true nature and draw out the darkest side of the human heart. Reluctantly, the deputy cult leader returned the celestial eye to the cult leader. Opportunities to use such a treasured artifact were rare. In theory, he had no authority to use the celestial eye, but this time, to start the third test, the cult leader had temporarily handed it over to him. The cult leader said, "This third test is of utmost importance. It will determine whether any righteous cultivators have infiltrated the demonic cult as undercover agents. The celestial eye can unleash a person's true nature. Righteous cultivators, with their kind hearts, will not cause much destruction. Under the glow of the celestial eye, those righteous ones won't even be able to go against their nature to commit murder or arson. They will even intervene when they see injustice. This way, we can filter out any righteous cultivators who have sneaked in. To become a member of the Bushido cult, the primary condition is that you must not be a righteous undercover agent." The deputy cult leader laughed. Moreover, the celestial eye can automatically judge the level of destruction based on one's cultivation. With the celestial eye in play, you and I only need to wait for the results. Thwippy. A passerby's heart was pierced by a sword. Others screamed and ran away while a demonic cultivator stood behind, laughing heartily. As he laughed, he slashed at the bystanders, heads fell, and bodies were scattered everywhere. Ah, so satisfying, so satisfying. The demonic cultivator had never felt such joy in killing. In high spirits and unleashing his true nature, he declared, "Today, with your corpses, I will lay the foundation of my status in the Bushido cult." He intended to take full advantage of this chance to kill to his heart's content. Stop! A large spear suddenly appeared and parried the demonic cultivator's sword. When the demonic cultivator recognized the newcomer, he was momentarily stunned. "Who did I think you were? Isn't that Feng Hao? You always act so cold. I thought you were a notorious demonic cultivator, turns out you're one of the righteous." Feng Hao forced himself to calm down, telling himself that this was a critical moment. He could not reveal his true righteous identity, otherwise all his previous efforts would be wasted. Alas, under the shroud of the celestial eye's purple light, no disguise could hold. He could not stand the demonic cultivator's wanton slaughter and felt an overwhelming urge to stop him, an impulse that no means could restrain. Feng Hao and the demonic cultivator clashed, sword and spear colliding, and for a while neither could gain the upper hand. As expected, a righteous one has snuck in, the deputy cult leader roared in anger. If it weren't for the third test, Feng Hao would have entered the Bushido cult. The cult leader's gaze turned icy. "I need not say more, you should know what to do." The deputy cult leader nodded. "I'll have the Huangwei branch leader kill him right away." "Kill him? No way. Hurry and notify the Huangwei branch leader, our stronghold's location has been exposed. Get out quickly." "Ha!" The deputy cult leader was dumbfounded. The cult leader explained in an exasperated tone, "What do you mean? Feng Hao's ability to pass the test shows that the righteous have already discovered the location of the Huangwei branch. Why wouldn't they pack up and flee immediately? What about Feng Hao then? We can't kill him. The righteous surely have Feng Hao's soul lamp. If we kill him, the righteous will know an undercover agent has been exposed and they will all rush toward the Huangwei branch. How would they have time to escape?" Oh. Chapter 75, The Ultimate Technique of the Xianxia Fist. "This is kind of troublesome." Lu Yang clicked his tongue, sensing something was off. All the other members of the Yanjiang branch had already left in a hurry to commit misdeeds, leaving only the three of them behind. If left unchecked, the three of them could go wild and turn the entire Feixian city upside down. But their true natures wouldn't allow it. They were here as undercover agents in the demonic cult, and many of them were genuine demonic cultivators. No wonder I've never heard of anyone infiltrating the Bushido cult as an undercover agent. "So this test exists too," remarked Meng Jingzhou, finding the challenge particularly tricky. "What's the worst mischief you'd most like to commit?" Lu Yang asked. After a long pause, Meng Jingzhou hesitantly replied, "Would going to a brothel count?" Since childhood, his clan had forbidden him from visiting brothels and similar places. All the uncles who had been there would say that a brothel was a dreadful place, one that little kids should never go to. Seeing his uncles return home in a sorry state, kneeling and scrubbing on washboards, Meng Jingzhou truly believed that brothels were terrifying places. Now, being single, oh no, with his pure young spirit root, it was simply out of the question. For him, engaging in such a rebellious act would be the worst kind of mischief. Manga couldn't even imagine it. "Forget it. We still have a whole day. Let's go to the brothel and relax a bit, Lu Yang suggested with a mischievous glint in his eye. He already had a plan, joking to himself, what chance could such rules possibly hold him back? There was plenty of time, no need to act immediately. After all, since opportunities were rare, why not first fulfill Meng Jingzhou's wish? Meng Jingzhou's eyes lit up. Yes, since they weren't in their true forms, a quick trip wouldn't hurt. Come on, let's go, he urged, unwilling to go alone. Unable to argue with him, the other two had no choice but to go together. The brothel was in a very prominent location, so the three found it easily. Flamboyantly dressed, sisters at the door waving handkerchiefs to beckon customers with a single coquettish gesture, they could lure the souls of passers-by. At the entrance, Manga suddenly began to back away, protesting, "I'm a scholar. This isn't a place for a scholar to go." He added dramatically, the sage once said, "A beauty in rouge is but a skull, one who enchants a city or a nation turns to white bones. I must not commit such an error." After much futile persuasion that left him no better, Mangu eventually relented. Loyal as ever, Lu Yang declared, "Since you're unwilling to go to the brothel, I'll go in your stead." Manga sighed with relief, thinking Brother Lu is the reliable one. Then he watched in astonishment as Lu Yang unleashed a series of Xianxia fist moves and transformed into a mirror image of Mangu. Manga's eyes went wide. Lu Yang patted the stunned Mangu on the shoulder and signaled him to relax. "I'm going." Manga quickly grabbed at his other self, exclaiming, "You can't go. And even if you do, you must not transform into my appearance. I'm doing this for you." "It would be such a shame if you couldn't go," Lu Yang replied sincerely. But Manga was adamant. "Don't be shy," Lu Yang coaxed. In truth, Lu Yang was also very nervous. He had never been to a place like this before. What if something went wrong? He couldn't risk making a fool of himself and have Meng Jingzhou laugh at him for the rest of his life. Naturally, he thought of transforming into Mangu's form so that if he embarrassed himself, at least it wouldn't be his own face. Some things, of course, must never be spoken of. While the three bickered, a loud rumble suddenly erupted from the brothel, followed by piercing screams from women and raucous laughter from men. They all turned their heads in alarm and saw over a dozen cultivators in the brothel behaving wantonly, clutching women, clearly stolen from respectable households. These cultivators made no effort to hide their cultivation level, all were at the foundation establishment stage, and a couple even exuded an aura no less formidable than those tiger demons from before. All of them had come here to take part in the test. Damn bastards! The three felt a burning anger deep in their hearts and wanted to step in. Both Meng Jingzhou and Mangu were about to act when Lu Yang stopped them. "Don't be rash. There are only three of us, we can't possibly defeat them." "So, what do you propose?" Meng Jingzhou asked anxiously. Lu Yang waved his hand dismissively. "I have a way to temporarily boost my combat power. Just wait here for me, you too." Curious, Meng Jingzhou and Mangu exchanged glances. They didn't have any 10-ox strength pills. Could it be that Lu Yang had learned some secret method to temporarily enhance his cultivation? Lu Yang drew a deep breath. His movements softened and his eyes turned from lively to cold and unyielding. His expression became impassive and an aloof aura radiated from him. Meng Jingzhou squinted, then his eyes widened in surprise. That motion was strikingly reminiscent of Master Sister Yunji. Lu Yang was executing the Lu clan's Xianxia fist, transforming himself into the appearance of Master Sister. He had joked before that the Lu clan's Xianxia fist had 9 levels, and upon reaching the 9th, one could transform in an instant into a transcendent powerhouse of the tribulation crossing stage. He said that because he had discovered that when he transformed into Mangu's form, his physical strength surpassed that of his true self by a bit. The Lu clan's Xianxia fist can absorb part of the power of the form one mimics. Of course, such power is limited, it cannot increase without bound, but it's still very formidable. Lu Yang intended to assume Master Sister's appearance to see just how much power he could gain, whether it would be enough to defeat these miscreants. "Master Sister, forgive me," he thought. A breathtakingly beautiful woman appeared, so stunning that it took one's breath away. Her glance shone radiantly and an eternal frost seemed to linger in her brows. Both Meng Jingzhou and Mangu, upon seeing this beauty, instinctively held their breath as their legs began to tremble. Lu Yang had successfully transformed into Master Sister. He felt a surge of mighty power descending from the heavens, pouring into his body. Wandao Sect, Tianmen Peak. On the mountaintop, Yunji sat cross-legged. Her eyes were open as she gazed upward, as if she could see the endless sea of stars far beyond. Her aura was so tightly contained that anyone watching would merely think she was an ordinary mortal. But an ordinary mortal would never levitate atop a peak, nor would their eyes reflect a dazzling galaxy. Who has taken away my power? Yunji withdrew her gaze, sensing that a trace of her power had separated from her body and was drifting off into infinity. Let's see who has such audacity. Xianxia had never encountered a thief with such nerve. She shed her mortal guise and let her aura burst forth like a sharp halberd, piercing through the clouds, fully displaying the demeanor of a master sister of the Wendao sect. Her soul then left her body, transforming into a streak of piercing light that chased after that stray fragment of power. Cough. Lu Yang couldn't withstand even a trace of Master Sister's power and reverted back to his original form. Both Meng Jingzhou and Manga sighed in relief. The oppressive aura of Lu Yang in Master Sister's form was simply too overwhelming. Crack! A crisp sound rang out from above. Whether it was the demonic cultivator in the midst of his wanton looting and slaughter, or the three who were about to act heroically, everyone froze, staring up in shock. In what had seemed like an infinite space, a crack suddenly appeared as if something had collided with it. Crack, crack, crack. The fissure widened like a dried-up riverbed, growing larger and larger. With a resounding splash, the crack became a gap as if the heavens had revealed a massive hole. From that gap emerged a striking figure, her brows slightly furrowed. This aura, is it from the demonic cult? First year, when Princess Dakian first encountered the gentleman, that man, with his righteous aura, presided over justice. She sneered, a false gentleman. Second year, during the imperial succession struggle, where a single misstep would mean total defeat, when she closed her eyes, resigned to death, that man was the only one to step forward, risking his life and fortune to escort her back to the capital. She lightly scoffed, he's still a gentleman. Fifth year, amid a coup and enthronement with the empress presiding, he was offered high office, lavish wealth, and noble beauties, but he refused them all. She frowned slightly, indeed, a gentleman. 10th year, one morning, waking up with her whole body aching, she gritted her teeth and cursed the one by her side, what a waste of a gentleman. Chapter 76, Escape for Your Life. At the headquarters of the Bushio cult within a bronze ancient cauldron called the Xianxia, a dense white aura flowed. The consciousnesses of the demonic cultivators were contained within the cauldron. The celestial eye opened, projecting a luminous screen on which various rankings scrolled by. The cult leader and the deputy cult leader were intently watching the outstanding performances of the top-ranked individuals. You see that guy from Kunlun City? Not bad at all. Before he killed anyone, he recited the Song of Rebirth. Very ceremonial. I heard he used to be a monk at a temple, preaching that one must kill to achieve Buddhahood. In secret, he'd kill countless people. When his superiors found out, they intended to beat him to death. Realizing his act was exposed, he smashed a Buddha statue and fled early. He joined our Bushio cult to see if the undying immortal would support his ideas. And that little guy from Tsuha Jun? He's got some ideas too, insisting on fratricide, manipulating children to kill their fathers, and even grandsons to kill their grandfathers, then turning the dead into puppets. Oh, this one's interesting. He smashed down load-bearing walls until entire buildings collapsed, killing many people. The two high-ranking leaders discussed the misdeeds of the top-ranked cultivators with great enthusiasm. To rank so high, these individuals were undoubtedly ruthless scoundrels, and as they grew, they'd have a high chance of being promoted to the upper echelons. Now, what about those three little guys who performed exceptionally in the first two tests? After scrolling through the luminous screen for a long time, the two finally found Lu Yang and his two companions. They discovered that the three were still debating whether or not to go to a brothel. The deputy cult leader frowned at their low ranking. Ranking so low? Could it be their righteous infiltrators? They wouldn't commit heinous acts, would they? The cult leader shook his head sagely. Don't jump to conclusions. I think that fellow named Lu Yang is a man of ideas. He probably has a plan that will astonish everyone. Remember, committing misdeeds isn't just about quick and dirty actions. Long-term planning is the superior approach. Noticing that Lu Yang hadn't made any move, the two shifted the screen to display the top-ranked offender's misdeed. The top-ranked one is a poisoner. He contaminated a well with poison so that one death would make an entire street his grave, and even dosed cattle with poison, driving them mad so they rampaged through the streets and trampled many people. Very clever. The use of poison should be like that. Then there's this one with a bizarre method. He bought up a large swath of commercial properties and then fired every single shop assistant. And this one below him did something similar. After monopolizing a block of shops, he forced the employees to work overtime without pay. Is that even considered mischief? The deputy cult leader grumbled that he seemed to be falling behind the times. Suddenly, an overwhelmingly domineering divine soul descended from the heavens, breaking through the various arrays set up around the headquarters and charged straight toward the bronze cauldron, radiating a chaotic aura. The bronze Xianxia seemed unable to withstand such a brute force, and a fine crack appeared on its surface. Damn it, my cauldron, the cult leader shouted. The Xianxia was his treasured life-forming artifact, meticulously refined with half a lifetime's effort and capable of containing all things. It was separated from being a true celestial treasure by a hair's breadth. It's a divine soul descending. A righteous powerhouse has discovered our location, the cult leader cried in disbelief. What in the world happened? How in the blink of an eye has a righteous powerhouse found us? This aura, could it be Yunji of the Wendao sect? The cult leader recognized the familiar aura and a shiver ran down his spine as he recalled some terrible past events. The deputy cult leader's face turned fierce as he unsheathed his weapon, preparing to execute the intruder. Yunji? She's merely a disciple of the Wendao sect, a single person at most. If we call in everyone and attack as one, can't we take her down? Yunji rarely makes a move. In the central continent, her reputation is relatively low, far less prominent than that of a sect patriarch, 8 elders of the Wendao sect, or even Dai Bufan. But a low profile does not mean she lacks strength. Anyone who has witnessed her in action knows that she defies all conventional understanding of cultivation. Coincidentally, the cult leader had seen Yunji in action, plucking stars and capturing the moon, appending yin and yang, and casually suppressing powerful foes. He truly felt that his 3,000 years of cultivation were wasted on a dog. In a fit of desperation, the cult leader kicked the deputy cult leader aside. You've never seen her fight, don't underestimate her. Listen to me and run. If you delay, not even the undying immortal can save you. The cult leader had risen to his position not only because of his devoutness and highest cultivation but also because he was cautious enough to know when to fight, when to flee, and when to accept fate. Going toe-to-toe with Yunji isn't fighting, it's resigning oneself to fate. The cult leader began etching ancient, mystic seals onto the Xianxia Ding in an effort to prevent Yunji from breaking through. The deputy cult leader had never seen the cult leader act so out of control. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he transmitted a command to all the high-ranking members, a death order, flee immediately to the backup headquarters. For scenarios involving righteous sneak attacks, the Bushio cult had detailed contingency plans and escape routes and had drilled these procedures repeatedly. The high-ranking members were all well acquainted with the protocol. In the blink of an eye, the upper echelons of the Bushio cult vanished without a trace. The cult leader unleashed his divine prowess, his 3 heads and 6 arms technique. With both hands, he formed seals to further reinforce the Xianxia Ding's ceiling, and with 4 hands he guided the consciousnesses within the cauldron back to their rightful places. But cracks continued to multiply on the Xianxia Ding, and the rate of sealing couldn't keep up with the spread of the fractures. Once he saw that everyone had successfully fled, the cult leader exhaled in relief. He severed the connection with the Xianxia Ding and vomited a mouthful of refined blood, a backlash from his cherished artifact. His aura plummeted and his face turned as pale as paper. Without time to dwell on it, the cult leader turned and ran. Boom! The Xianxia Ding shattered, its explosion shaking the entire headquarters to its core. From within the remnants of the Xianxia Ding, Yunji emerged, her expression impassive like an ancient valkyrie from legendary times, sacred and untouchable. She stooped down and, with a delicate swipe of her fingertip, wiped away some of the cult leader's spilled refined blood. After a brief calculation, a cold gleam flashed in her eyes. Over there, she declared. In her hand, a searing white light coalesced, a brilliant heavenly thunderbolt meant to exterminate all evil. In a whoosh, the white thunderbolt shot toward the cult leader. Caught off guard and unable to dodge in time, a burst of blood spurted from his shoulder. Golden cicada shell. The cult leader activated one of his life-saving techniques. By the time Yunji caught up, only a shattered remnant of the cult leader remained. Stumbling, the cult leader managed to retreat back to the backup headquarters. He stuffed life-extending pills into his mouth as if they were free, severed the connection with the Xianxia Ding, and employed his golden cicada shell secret method. After 2 successive brutal strikes, even centuries of solitary cultivation wouldn't have sufficed to restore him. That was all well and good, but the most important matter was the Xianxia Ding. This treasured cauldron had been refined by the entire cult at enormous cost. The consumption of rare heavenly materials was comparable to 10 years' worth of taxes in the Great Xia dynasty. And now, such a priceless artifact had fallen into the hands of the Wendao sect. How do you feel? The deputy cult leader asked with concern. He had been terrified after witnessing Yunji's move. If it had been him in that situation, he'd have been done for ages. Only the cult leader's formidable ability had allowed him to survive. I'm not dead yet, the cult leader replied, still haunted. Luckily, we had a contingency plan. We prepared a safe haven in advance that cut off all causal ties. Yunji won't be able to find us. Otherwise, the 4 great demonic cults would have been reduced to 3. Now that the Xianxia Ding is shattered, let's call the 3rd test over. Let's see who's number 1 now. The celestial eye projected another luminous screen. On it, a name was boldly displayed. Number 1, Lu Yang. Chapter 77 Evaluation. Who on earth borrowed my power? Yunji asked in confusion. The Bushio cult had fled in a hurry with everyone in tow, leaving not a single soul behind, only the Shanheding, which is worth enough to buy a top-ranking sect. Now, she still couldn't determine who had borrowed her power. There is a type of spell called Divine Descent Technique that, with the other party's consent, can borrow their power. Such spells are nearly extinct and extremely difficult to learn. Yunji hadn't seen one of these in ages. And who would dare to borrow someone's power without their permission? Yunji sensed that the person who borrowed her power had no malicious intent. In her instinctive reaction, she had not resisted the outflow of power. Now, she had a pretty good guess as to who it was. But where on earth did he learn the Divine Descent Technique? Yunji couldn't recall ever teaching Lu Yang any similar spell. First place, Lu Yang. The first place has changed. The deputy cult leader asked in confusion. They had been so busy scrambling for their lives that they hadn't noticed what Lu Yang had done. With the Shanheding shattered, there was no way to review the events. But the celestial eye never makes a mistake. The destructive potential of these three is the highest. The cult leader stated confidently. He too hadn't guessed what Lu Yang had done. The previous top-ranked person had killed hundreds in a short time and left thousands with lingering dangers. He was doomed to die soon. Yet Lu Yang managed to surpass him instantly and take first place. It was simply incredible. But there was no need to guess. The celestial eye is a treasure of the immortals, far superior even to the Shanheding, and it never errs. Indeed, Lu Yang had summoned Yunji, destroyed the Shanheding and the Bushio cult headquarters. The level of destruction he inflicted on the Bushio cult ranks among the top 3 in history. If one were to consider only the damage done to the cult leader himself, it would be number 1. The cult leader said with self-satisfied glee, forgetting the pain in his body. See, I told you so. This fellow, Lu Yang, has great wisdom. Though his ranking might have lagged for a while, if you aren't paying attention, he'll pull off a big move. Now he's risen to first place. Don't be fooled by Meng Jingzhou and the manga you favor. They performed averagely. It was just a matter of time. If they had more time, they'd certainly grab second or third place. The deputy cult leader had to concede in admiration. After all, the cult leader was the real deal, not only cautious in his actions but with a shrewd eye for talent. No wonder the deputy is only second in rank while the cult leader is the true leader. So, what is your evaluation of Lu Yang? After a moment of thought, the cult leader replied slowly. In the first test, Lu Yang took an unorthodox approach, displaying his martial talent and his ability to enter the Tao through martial means, a rarity in this world. In the second test, he observed carefully and deduced the pattern, even buying up the potatoes so that later candidates couldn't be tested. This shows his tremendous capacity for destruction. In the third test, this trait was even more apparent. Calling him born a demonic seed wouldn't be an exaggeration. The deputy cult leader was astonished. Even after knowing the cult leader for so long, he had never heard anyone receive such high praise. And what about Meng Jingzhou? Meng Jingzhou was bitten by a spider in the first test, which granted him power. It was a matter of luck. In this grand era, that makes him a seed of the Tao, born at the right moment. In the second test, he studied the questions meticulously and considered the issues from multiple angles. Though he appeared arrogant and domineering, in reality he was methodical, planning each step to eventually break through the examiner's psychological defenses and pass the test smoothly. Unfortunately, he hadn't yet fully displayed his strengths in the third test. He is a bit inferior to Lu Yang. He could be described as the Tao of demons descending upon the world. That evaluation, the Tao of demons descending, was exceedingly rare. Among the younger generation, few could ever receive such praise from the cult leader. It seems that Meng Jingzhou's future is boundless. And what of Mangu? Mangu, in the first test, showed insight, perseverance, and strategy. In the second test, he considered matters very thoroughly. Only in the third test did he lack a firm opinion. In previous tests, he was among the most outstanding performers, but alas, with finer jewels ahead of him, I can only give him an evaluation of the demon in his heart. An evaluation of the demon in his heart means that, based on past experience, as long as he does not fall, he can eventually rise to a high position in the Bushio cult. Should we transfer them to the headquarters for intensive training? The deputy cult leader asked. The cult leader shook his head and shared his own experience. Don't be so hasty. They should start at the grassroots level for at least 2 years. Trust me, grassroots experience is very helpful for future growth. That's how I climbed the ranks. And I have another plan. Lu Yang is wildly imaginative and possesses tremendous creativity and destructive force. Once he matures, let's see if he can even infiltrate a righteous sect, say, the Wendao sect. The deputy cult leader chuckled, thinking that the cult leader was too optimistic about them. They might manage to infiltrate other sects, but the Wendao sect? That's far too difficult. Even among the disciples of the Wendao sect, hardly anyone's ideas can keep up. If one were to infiltrate, it wouldn't be long before one's misfit nature was exposed. Infiltrating the Wendao sect is no easy task. I'm off to tend to my wounds now, said the cult leader, and he retreated to his private chamber to meditate and recover. The deputy cult leader had never harbored any thoughts of usurping power. Today's incident was an example. Even if he could climb one step by eliminating the cult leader, what would he do when the righteous struck back? Could he make the right decision? If he made the wrong call, he'd surely die by the righteous techniques, and then it would be too late to regret his ambition. Yanzhong branch. All told, 10 people passed the test, and among them 3 received the evaluations born a demonic seed, the Tao of demons descending upon the world, and the demon in his heart. The branch leader's face lit up with joy as he received the message from the cult leader. This was even better than his best-case scenario. A promotion was now within reach. The demonic cultivators who didn't pass the first and second tests had been scattered by the 11 deacons during their unconscious state and thrown off to various locations. When they woke up, they would forget the location of the Yanzhong branch, thinking the whole experience was nothing more than a dream. The safest method would have been to kill them, ensuring that the location of the Yanzhong branch would never be revealed. However, for the sake of the overall strategy, the Bushio cult chose not to do so. These demonic cultivators wreak havoc wherever they go, attracting the attention of the righteous. Amid the chaotic flood of information, the righteous cannot distinguish which actions are the work of rogue demonic cultivators and which belong to the Bushio cult, thus achieving a disorienting effect. Lu Yang and his 2 companions gradually regained consciousness. They had experienced too much and their minds were a bit muddled. The last thing they recalled before passing out was Master Sister descending from the heavens. Lu Yang broke into a cold sweat. He hoped that Master Sister hadn't seen him transform into her likeness. If she did, he'd be skinned alive. Meng Jingzhou and Mangi also remembered what had happened. Lu Yang's Xianxia fist had summoned the real Master Sister. Lu Yang shot them a warning look, silently ordering them not to leak any news, and they both nodded promptly. The branch leader suppressed his inner joy and spoke in as calm a tone as possible. From today on, you 10 are officially members of the Bushio cult. Normally, you would first undergo the initiation ceremony, but since today's 3 rounds of tests have exhausted everyone's energy, even myself, it would be disrespectful to the undying immortal to visit in such a state. We will hold the formal initiation ceremony here tomorrow. Lu Yang could tell by the branch leader's tone and by the expressions of the 11 deacons when the undying immortal was mentioned that their belief in the undying immortal was not merely for show but genuine. No wonder it's called a cult, Lu Yang thought. The branch leader continued, since new members have joined today, it wouldn't be proper not to celebrate. So, let's all go out for a meal. I heard that a new barbecue restaurant called Once Again has opened in the county. It's delicious and has received rave reviews. Let's meet there later, my treat. Lu Yang. Meng Jingzhou. Mangi. They were not exactly thrilled at the prospect of more work. Chapter 78, Shop Owner, come out. We're so exhausted, we just don't feel like doing any work, the 3 mumbled in unison, yawning so hard that their eyelids seemed to be battling each other. What a lousy idea from the branch leader to drag us here just to eat. After a long day of scheming and battling our way deep into the enemy's inner circle, all we wanted now was a big meal and a good nap. The process of having everyone's thoughts concentrated into the Shanheding by the Bushio cult left us utterly drained. Good thing I had the spirit ghosts properly thread the skewers before we came here, so we can open shop as soon as we get back, Manga said, sounding rather relieved. Arriving at the barbecue restaurant, Lu Yang spotted a familiar face. Constable Wei? What are you doing here, got business? Lu Yang asked. Constable Wei had been knocking on the restaurant's door for a long while without any answer, thinking the place was empty. In truth, there was no one in the shop except for 2 spirit ghosts laboriously threading skewers. The poor ghosts were so frightened by his knocking that they almost died of fear and didn't dare open the door. Just as Constable Wei was about to give up, Lu Yang arrived. Constable Wei's face lit up. Shop manager Lu, you're finally back. Lu Yang nodded and immediately spat out a lie. This morning the weather looked great, so the 3 of us thought it'd be a perfect day for a little outing. We just went for a stroll and have just returned. And are you open for business today? Constable Wei asked. Lu Yang thought for a moment. With the branch leader and his entourage, no less than 20 people expected to be here, it certainly counted as opening. We're open. Using as gentle a tone as he could muster, Constable Wei said, Shop manager Lu, you see, your barbecue place is quite well known around here. I often bring a few of my brothers over to eat. I know you guys just love your little barbecue shop, you're not looking to expand, nor do you want others advertising for you, Lu Yang replied with a nod. Constable Wei then sighed regretfully. My brothers just can't keep their mouths shut. They finish eating and then go bragging about how delicious your food is. Now, word's gotten around and others are drooling too. Some even say that after their shifts, they'll all come here to eat, and the night shift guys at the station want you to bring some back for them. Looking at Constable Wei's expression, Lu Yang thought, it's not just your brothers talking, you, Constable Wei, must have been spreading the word too. So, he prodded. Well, we've got plenty of constables in Yanjiang County, enough to fill every table. Even the chief constable is coming. I was thinking maybe we could book the whole place tonight and have it just for us. Lu Yang suddenly realized the implications and then frowned. But tonight, I also have a few friends coming over. I'm afraid. Don't worry, Constable Wei interrupted quickly. We can manage a few extra people. Besides, the more the merrier. Before arriving, Constable Wei had been boasting to his colleagues that they'd definitely get a table here, and if they didn't, he'd be embarrassed. Lu Yang agreed. All right, then. Let's get ready. We'll open in half an hour. Satisfied, Constable Wei left. At the appointed time, people began gathering at the barbecue restaurant from all directions, the branch leader, 11 deacons, and 7 new recruits. Qi Shulong and Shenjini even showed up carrying several jars of wine. I was worried this little shop's wine might not pack enough punch, so I brought along several jars of 30-year-old Ling wine, daughter red, explained Qi Shulong and Shenjini. This Ling wine was incredibly potent, even Foundation establishment cultivators would be overwhelmed by its strength. The other 5 new members tried to contribute wine as a token of respect, but since they were only at the Qi refinement stage, they couldn't offer anything of quality. To prepare for the meal, the branch leader even changed his mask, switching to one that revealed the lower half of his face. Lu Yang and his 2 companions stepped out of the barbecue restaurant and called out, "Come on in, everyone, the place is ready." Originally, the entire venue was booked for a private party, but after some haggling, they reserved 1 table for us. The branch leader nodded. He'd been worried that Lu Yang and his 2 might be troublemakers who wouldn't follow orders and that he'd have to put them in their place, but it seemed they'd been sensible enough to book a table in advance. Everyone, stop standing around, come on in, the branch leader urged. Inside, the restaurant was nearly empty and the branch leader naturally took the largest, best-positioned table in the center, befitting his status. Lu Yang quietly pointed out, "Branch leader, that table's already reserved." Before the branch leader could respond, Qi Shulong blurted out, "Make them move over." What the heck, how dare they compete with us for the best table? Seeing no objection from the branch leader, Lu Yang fell silent. Once everyone was seated, Manga pulled out a menu. "What do we want to eat?" Shinjini handed the menu to the branch leader. "Please, branch leader." The branch leader waved his hand. "Order whatever you like." "Since you're a host, you should be the one ordering," someone suggested. "Not necessary, you all order freely," he replied. After the ordering responsibility went around in a circle, it ended up back with Mangu. He smirked, thinking these folks were so fussy, taking forever just to order a skewer. Not one to shirk responsibility, Manga quickly made his order and took the menu to the back, instructing the 2 spirit ghosts to start the barbecue. Soon enough, he returned with tray after tray of delicious, aromatic skewers. The aroma alone made it clear that they'd be fantastic. Come on, the skewers are here. Pour the drinks," the branch leader said with a grin, motioning for everyone to fill their glasses. Meng Jingshou chuckled, "I don't really need the alcohol, I'm used to tea. I'm not a drinker." The branch leader laughed warmly. "Little Meng, when you roam the martial world, you must learn to drink. There'll be plenty of opportunities. Have 3 cups to get used to it." But Meng Jingshou still refused. Not willing to lose face, the branch leader's brow furrowed slightly and Qi Shulong seized the moment to chide, "What's your problem? When the branch leader offers you a drink and you refuse, aren't you disrespecting him?" Meng Jingshou scoffed, "It's just a drink, how does that become about respect? If the branch leader tells me to drink, isn't that him not giving me any face?" Qi Shulong was about to retort further, but the branch leader quickly intervened. Knowing Meng Jingzhou had a bright future ahead, he didn't want to quarrel. What the cult leader had said about Lu Yang and his 2 would remain known only to the branch leader, even Lu Yang and his pals didn't know it. "Welcome meal doesn't need to be so formal. Let me introduce myself first. My surname is Chu, you can call me Branch Leader Chu," the branch leader announced. After his introduction, a tall, thin man who had once gone to a brothel with Qin Yuanhao spoke up, "I'm Wang He, but those who know me call me Wang Big Mouth." Bai Zifang. Peng Shua. One by one, the 11 deacons introduced themselves. They merely stated their names without revealing their cultivation levels, hobbies, or special skills. In the demonic cult, trust is scarce, so it's best to conceal as much as possible. As if no argument had ever taken place, everyone ate together merrily. "These skewers are really amazing," Qi Shulong remarked after tasting a few. They were by far the best he had ever had. Greed stirred within him and he quietly asked the branch leader, should we force the shop owner to hand over the recipe? Even if we sell these skewers by the spirit stone, there's a market and we could make a killing. The branch leader's eyes gleamed with interest. He'd done plenty of killing, plundering, and extortion before, this wouldn't be any different. Lu Yang asked from the side, but what if the shop owner refuses to give us the recipe? A shiver passed over Qi Shulong as he sneered, then we'll see whether he values his life more than his recipe. He pounded the table and bellowed, shop owner, come out. The skewers are all set up and yet you hide, don't you know the rules? Immediately, Constable Wei's voice rang out from outside, haha, where's the shop owner? I've brought all my fellows over. A group of constables, including the chief constable of the Golden Core stage, burst in and surrounded the branch leader's table. Chapter 79, Righteous and Demonic are one family. The constables had dispersed and taken their seats, no exaggeration in Constable Wei's words, for indeed, a multitude had arrived and nearly every seat was filled. At the central table sat the branch leaders group, surrounded by constables. The atmosphere was strikingly congenial, a scene that could well be described as righteous and demonic as one family. Qi Shulong was so frightened that he immediately lowered his head. Despite his notorious reputation outside for his swagger, that was merely the persona he crafted. When he committed misdeeds, he either disguised himself or hid his face, and whenever he encountered the authorities, he dodged as far away as possible. Now, with no escape, he could do nothing but keep his head down like an ostrich. Constable Wei, I'm here, Lu Yang said cheerfully as he rose to greet him. Qi Shulong's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Lu Yang. So it turns out you really are the shop owner. You all are already eating, Constable Wei said a bit sheepishly. No problem at all, what are you all having? Lu Yang inquired. With a dismissive wave, Constable Wei replied, with so many people here, we won't be ordering much. Just bring out whatever's available. All right, Lu Yang agreed, anticipating that Wei's plan was the same. The moment the constables caught a whiff of the delicious aroma emanating from the branch leader's table, they instinctively swallowed hard. It was mealtime, already hungry, and the scent only made their hunger worse. Luckily, Lu Yang had planned ahead. Even before Constable Wei and his colleagues arrived, he had ordered the spirit ghosts to fire up the grill and begin cooking a portion of the food so that, once everyone arrived, the dishes could be served immediately. Before long, Meng Jingzhou and Mangu emerged carrying tray after tray of grilled skewers, providing the constables with a hearty starter. Though Constable Wei didn't say it aloud, he felt deep gratitude toward Lu Yang. Otherwise, after waiting while the enticing aroma filled the air, he'd surely face complaints from his fellow officers. Allow me to introduce our chief constable, Fang Qingyun, someone announced. Fang Qingyun politely shook hands with Lu Yang. As a cultivator in the Jindin stage, he could immediately tell that Lu Yang was one of their kind. Not only that, but it was also obvious that everyone at the branch leader's table were cultivators too. He said no more. After all, cultivators opening businesses were plenty, and as long as they didn't break the law, it wasn't his concern. Running a barbecue shop certainly wasn't illegal. If a table was taken, well, that was just how it was. He, as chief constable, couldn't bully people with his authority and risk a bad reputation. After Lu Yang sat down with a smile, Qi Shulong muttered angrily in a low voice as he complained to the branch leader, "You bastard with ulterior motives, why didn't you warn us earlier that the constables were coming?" Lu Yang looked rather indignant. Isn't it that I wanted you all to build good relations with the constables? You should seize this opportunity. Pointing to a banner hanging on the wall, Lu Yang continued, see that? It's a banner given to me by Constable Wei. Then, offhand, he fabricated, before I even joined the organization, I secured a hideout, established relationships, and connected with the authorities. That way, no matter what I do, they never suspect a thing. When they come here to drink, I can even eavesdrop on their conversations. Branch leader Chu nodded in approval. Lu Yang's explanation was logical and in line with the cult leader's earlier appraisal. The cult leader had remarked that although these three might seem to act frivolously, there was deep meaning behind their actions. One should never judge merely by appearances. By proactively forging ties with the authorities, the boldness and vision they demonstrated far surpassed that of most in the cult. Come on, let's drink, the branch leader announced. After a few skewers had been devoured to fill their stomachs, Constable Wei's group began drinking. As more and more skewers were consumed, the constables grew merrier, going through round after round of drinking with clinking cups, a truly lively scene. In sharp contrast, the central table where the branch leader and his team sat was noticeably subdued. They drank with extreme caution, afraid that if anyone got too drunk, trouble might erupt. Eventually, some even switched from alcohol to tea. Seeing that his table's atmosphere was subdued, Constable Wei, feeling a pang of guilt, perhaps his arrival had dampened the mood, approached with his wine cup in hand. Come on, don't mind us. We're just ordinary folks off duty. When we come to a barbecue joint, we're here to eat well and drink heartily. All right, let's have a drink, Constable Wei said to Qi Shulong. Carefully, Qi Shulong lifted his teacup, but Constable Wei, not satisfied, frowned and said sternly, "Drinking tea? What's the matter? Don't you have any respect? Pour some wine." Reluctantly, Qi Shulong had no choice but to pour the 30-year-old Ling wine he'd brought and down it in one gulp. Seeing Constable Wei's roundabout way of drinking, and noticing that the other constables were clearly getting drunk, they all began to follow suit, drinking alongside the branch leader's table with unabashed cheer. No one invited Lu Yang and his two companions to drink. If the owner got too drunk, that wouldn't do. The potency of the 30-year-old Ling wine was such that even cultivators at the foundation establishment stage couldn't handle it. Qi Shulong and his comrades were thoroughly intoxicated. When the branch leader saw that everyone had drunk enough, he found an excuse and excused himself. Once the big boss left, the influence of the alcohol led everyone to gradually let loose. Qi Shulong and Shinjini, draped over each other's shoulders, resolved to band together and make a mark in the Bushio cult. Qi Shulong, your biggest flaw is that you're too impulsive and flamboyant. You really need to tone it down, Shinjini said, trying to look out for him. Qi Shulong was indignant. By nature, he was free-spirited and resented being criticized. Oh, come on. If I'm flamboyant, then what about you? You're like a scared little turtle who never dares to act on your own, instead having a bunch of students do the work for you. Always dodging around like a sissy. Enraged, Shinjini snapped, Qi Shulong, have some decency. I'm only looking out for you, don't turn it back on me. Qi Shulong's anger flared even more. Who are you calling a dog? Before anyone could resolve the argument, Qi Shulong threw a punch at Shinjini's face. Not one to take such insults. Lying down, Shinjini retaliated by grabbing his wine cup and splashing its contents at Qi Shulong. Although Qi Shulong was drunk, his reflexes remained sharp enough that he dodged sideways, but in doing so, the wine spilled onto Bai Zifeng's face, who had been watching the commotion. Bai Zifeng wasn't one to be trifled with either. Having suffered an undeserved blow, he was determined to get even. In turn, he splashed Shinjini with wine, then, not content with that, he grabbed a plate and smashed it into Shinjini's face. Soon the three were tangled in a brawl, and when others tried to intervene, they were inadvertently injured, which only fueled the fury. Even though I meant well by sparing you from embarrassment, you ungrateful brats, how dare you hit me? I gave you face. The Ling wine was far too potent, and everyone's brains were not functioning properly. Whether among the constables or not, people started throwing punches. Clatter, clatter, the sound of a table being overturned echoed, sending items crashing onto the neighboring table. The constables had never seen such audacious behavior, cultivators brawling in public. And this was happening right in front of the constables. If they weren't there, who knows what might have happened. When cultivators gather and brawl, a single misstep can easily kill bystanders, a dangerously malignant situation that must be punished. Chief Constable Fang Qingyun, seeing the chaos, unleashed his imposing aura and swiftly subdued the demonic cult members. Take them away, let them sober up in the dungeon. Instantly, the cult members snapped back to reality, their faces drenched in cold sweat as they realized what had happened. With so many people involved at once, even the two spirit ghosts were overwhelmed, barely able to manifest a shadow. Seeing the situation, Manga stepped in personally while Lu Yang and Meng Jingzhou dashed between the back area and the main hall, serving freshly grilled skewers at a visibly rapid pace. Lu Yang pulled back the curtain and apologized, "Sorry, everyone, the skewers are all gone." "What's going on here?" Looking around the main hall, Lu Yang saw that the previously unruly cult members were now sitting meekly while the constables sneered at them. In a low voice, Constable Wei remarked, "Shop Manager Lu, I'm sorry. Your friends have been involved in a brawl." The chief constable despises it when cultivators fight in groups. The commotion was just too loud and the passers-by have taken notice. If we don't punish them, we won't have any excuse. Lu Yang was at a loss for words. Frankly speaking, Lu Yang had arranged for the cult members and the constables to sit together as a bit of a ploy, but he hadn't expected these people to be so brazen as to start a fight right in front of the constables. Meng Jingzhou sneered, "I told you, don't drink. Drinking never ends well." On the day of the welcoming party, Qi Shulong and the others were detained for 10 days for inciting a brawl. When branch leader Chu learned of the incident, he was stunned for a long time. Chapter 80, The Undying Immortal. Fortunately, Qi Shulong and the others were experienced enough that even if they were locked up, they wouldn't end up inadvertently spilling the secrets of the demonic cult. Otherwise, branch leader Chu would have had to consider silencing them permanently. Branch leader Chu sent word for Lu Yang and his 2 companions to come to the Yanjiang branch for a formal initiation ceremony. As for those dim-witted ones, they'd be locked up for 10 days to let them cool off. Chu, lounging lazily in a jade chair, looked up at the 3 standing before him and remarked approvingly, "Your idea of a barbecue shop is quite ingenious, keep it up. It's a perfect channel for us to establish contacts with the authorities." He then dismissed his attendants, none of whom were more than entry-level cultists, untested and unworthy of knowing the cult's deepest secrets. "Come on, let me take you to pay respects to the undying immortal." Chu led the 3 to another floating stone. The buildings atop the stone were of such an ancient origin that, having succumbed to the ravages of time, they now lay in ruins. Their pale, unworldly light felt both oppressive and somber. Walking among these ruins evoked a profound sense of history. Even a knowledgeable man like Meng Jingzhou could not tell exactly which era these structures belonged to. They were certainly not from the 10,000-year period of the Great Xia dynasty. Inwardly, Meng Jingzhou felt a chill. These structures must be at least 100,000 years old. Could they be from the Dayu dynasty? Historical records tell us that the last emperor of the Dayu dynasty was decadently indulgent, leading to the collapse of the dynasty and widespread chaos. It was then that the ancestors of the Meng and the Xia clans rose up and vied for control of the Central Plains. The Wendao sect was founded 120,000 years ago during the Dayu dynasty, though at that time the dynasty was at its zenith and its power was unassailable. At the very end of the ruins stood a roughly 4-meter-tall statue. Its features were as indistinct as the one seen in Qin Yuanhao's residence, a figure clad in a long robe, its gender indeterminate, the undying immortal. Branch leader Chu raised 3 burning incense sticks high and bowed deeply before the undying immortal. Then he turned to the 3 and said, "Sit in meditation for half an hour to dispel all worldly distractions." These incense sticks were no ordinary offerings. Their fragrance had the power to gradually calm even the most agitated heart. Clearing one's mind is a basic skill for you 3, and Branch leader Chu, seeing how quickly you settled, gave a slight nod of approval. Even with the aid of such treasured incense, this speed was remarkable. Most demonic cultivators are impulsive and neglect inner cultivation, but you 3 are truly exceptional. It appears you've encountered some form of opportunity somewhere along your path. Had it been known that you possessed such an opportunity, Branch leader Chu would have schemed to seize it. But you 3 are different. You're the focus of the cult leader's attention, and he doesn't dare to act against you. After half an hour, the 3 awoke and, following Chu's instructions and the prescribed steps, paid their respects to the undying immortal. Once the tedious rites were completed, the 3 were officially inducted as cultists of the Bushio cult. With his hands clasped behind his back, Chu said, "Before joining our cult, you may have only known us as the Bushio cult, believers in the undying immortal, and that becoming a cultist can extend your lifespan. As for why the undying immortal exists, that should remain largely unknown to you." The 3 nodded. They knew next to nothing about the undying immortal. Indeed, it was the only immortal they had ever heard of. In a tone of deep reverence, Chu continued, "The undying immortal's very existence is taboo, a being who lives as long as heaven and earth, witnessing the rise and fall of the world. Even if his mortal body is destroyed, his immortal soul decays, and all his spiritual brilliance is eroded by the mundane world. As long as someone remembers him, he can be reborn on the spot, eternally undying." The words struck a chord in Lu Yang and his companions. They weren't sure how much of Chu's words were true and how much were mere fabrications. After all, as long as someone remembers the undying immortal, he remains immortal. Such a phenomenon has never been recorded in any myth or legend. This sort of miraculous event leaves little room for doubt that he is rightly called an immortal. Chu went on, "That venerable man attained immortality in ancient times by proving his Tao through battle and killing. He cherished bloodshed above all. To appease the undying immortal, he must incite bloodshed and warfare, offering the deaths of millions of people as tribute. That is only the first step. The subsequent steps are not for you to know at your level." "Millions of people dying?" Meng Jingzhou exclaimed in horror. "How many lives would that be?" The thought of countless corpses strewn everywhere was beyond description. "Is it many?" "Not at all," Chu shook his head. "Most people, upon hearing that number, react in shock, but if you think it through calmly, the vastness of the central continent means that even if millions appear many in total, spread out it amounts to only one death in every few thousand people. Do you know how many people die each year from the burdens of life? How many are driven to suicide by unbearable stress? How many die from illness? Or how many die from incompetent medical treatment? How many unclaimed bodies does the Great Xia dynasty discover each year?" Chu sneered. "Do you know?" "Of course you don't, because the Great Xia dynasty dares not release the true figures. If we do not revive the undying immortal, who will protect this vast central continent?" When the old monsters buried in the barren mountains and wild fields begin to awaken one after another, the death toll will far exceed these numbers. Is the ancient age really that terrifying? Lu Yang's heart turned cold at the thought. Shu said no more. He motioned for the three to follow him. He led them around the Undying Immortal's statue and through a stretch of ruins, all the while explaining these ruins have been passed down from ancient times. Over the millennia, they have become decayed and dilapidated. 10,000 years ago, our founding patriarch happened upon these ruins and learned of the existence of the Undying Immortal here. The existence of the Undying Immortal is so ancient that the world has forgotten about the immortals who once protected it. It was our founding patriarch who brought the Undying Immortal back into the world. Our founding patriarch then made copies of this relic and placed them at various strongholds. This is one such copy, and it is over 10,000 years old. Inwardly, Meng Jingzhou mused that these copies of ancient relics explained why he couldn't tell their true age. Only legends have survived from those ancient times. Very few tangible artifacts remain. Shu stopped in front of a stone wall and said, "This is it, the site of an ancient sacrificial ceremony." Prominently displayed on the wall was an image of the Undying Immortal with outstretched arms. In his embrace were countless spheres, varying in size. Some of the spheres were encircled by ring-like objects of unknown nature. Atop each sphere knelt a small figure holding aloft offerings, presenting them to the Undying Immortal. What are these spheres? And why are people depicted standing on them? Meng Jingzhou and Manga asked in puzzled unison. Lu Yang's pupils narrowed as he examined the mural. The spheres looked strikingly similar to planets from a past life, and the rings around them resembled meteorite dust. Shu explained slowly, these are called planets. In ancient times, there was no central continent. All races lived upon their own planets. At the end of the ancient age, an unknown force transformed all the planets, condensing them into what is now the central continent. At his words, the three were all taken aback. Chapter 81, Stars and the Continent. Shu, the branch leader's words left the three utterly astonished, especially Lu Yang, whose mind began to race with new ideas. When they first entered the Wendao sect, they were given a rough map of the sect, which showed that Wendao's territory spanned 100,000 li in all directions. To grasp what that meant, imagine an area larger than 10 Earths spread out. Considering the descriptions in the ancient texts of how grand cultivators in the refinement and unification stages could perform miraculous feats, only a place this vast would allow them to truly let loose and display their divine skills. The sect possessed many forbidden zones, areas where mighty immortals would battle using their powers. Anyone whose cultivation wasn't high enough who even brushed the edges of these zones would likely meet a fatal end. When they first joined, the senior sister had said, the sect cannot be explained in a few words, you must gradually explore it in time. It wasn't that she was too lazy to explain, the Wendao sect was indeed so enormous that it required gradual exploration. Thinking it over, it seemed possible that Wendao might be the result of several planets spread out and merged. After all, the territory occupied by Wendao is only a corner of the central continent. Hardly can one imagine just how vast the central continent truly is. Shu continued, in ancient times there were tens of thousands, even more, of living stars, though the exact number is now impossible to verify. Back then, cultivators who reached the transformation stage no longer needed magical treasures, they could fly from one star to another. At that time, the entire universe was littered with damaged stars, the destructive aftermath of cultivators battling one another. The ancient era was unimaginably glorious, so many myths and legends were born, and countless great immortals emerged. In those times, when immortal cultivators measured power, it was about how many stars one could obliterate in a single strike. Power struggles were judged by the number of living stars under one's command. At the peak of that ancient splendor, there appeared a being who took action. He refined the myriad stars into an entire continent. Whether the stars were living or lifeless, none could escape his grasp. The central continent is teeming with life because this land was once made up of living stars, the very best place for cultivation. To the east of the central continent lies a vast ocean, which was once a star covered by water. To the west, the Golden Buddha Kingdom was once a dead, silent star where no one could live. The southern demon domain and the far north follow the same principle. Shu's words completely upended the three's understanding. They had never imagined that the very ground beneath their feet was formed by the refining of stars. It was beyond anything they could have imagined. Who exactly refined those stars? Lu Yang asked. Shu shook his head, not because Lu Yang wasn't capable, but because he genuinely did not know. It's impossible to determine his true form, but one thing is for sure, that being was absolutely an immortal. Such power, transcending the mortal realm, was far beyond what even someone at the tribulation crossing stage could achieve. Why would the being refine the stars into a continent? And by what means? All remain unsolved mysteries. Chu went on, what we do know is that his method was extremely crude and brutal, lacking any compassion. Consider, of all the life on those stars, how many could possibly survive his tampering? Even ordinary cultivators would scarcely live through it. Anyone who did survive did so not because of high cultivation, but simply because they were lucky. When the prodigies and mighty ones of that time rose to oppose him, they were all reduced to nothing more than a haze of blood and forced into reincarnation. Fortunately, the undying immortal intervened then, preserving the majority of humanity so that our race wouldn't vanish. When the era of unparalleled prosperity finally collapsed and for countless ages no genius emerged. Where that being is now remains unknown, but he is definitely not dead. When this new era arrives, he might very well reappear, and if he goes on a killing spree, who will be able to stop him? Only the undying immortal. Therefore, both publicly and privately, we must resurrect the undying immortal. Resurrecting the undying immortal may cost only a small number of lives, but if we fail to do so, the entire human race might be doomed. Curse those of the righteous who, thinking they embody the greater good, fail to realize that our Bushido cult also sacrifices for humanity. Chu spoke with unyielding determination, his eyes steely with resolve. From the perspective of the greater good, they killed to save lives. On a personal level, their actions had a just cause, allowing them to kill with a clear conscience. The reason the Bushido cult accepts only demonic cultivators is that this explanation most closely aligns with the mindset of a demonic cultivator. Liu Yang's heart skipped a beat. Just from hearing Chu's words, he feared that they might be driven to blindly worship the undying immortal, praying for the immortal's salvation. Yet what Chu had said might not be entirely true, or perhaps it was only part of the truth. Liu Yang found it hard to believe that the Wendao sect knew nothing about the ancient era, and he doubted that senior sister was completely unprepared for it. Meng Jingzhou then asked, if that's the case, why not cooperate with the righteous and work together? Wouldn't it be easier to succeed that way? Chu snorted coldly, who can guarantee that the being who refined the stars wasn't hidden within the ranks of the righteous? After thorough investigation, our founding patriarch concluded that the one who refined the stars is indeed among the righteous, either in one of the 5 great immortal sects or within the great Xia dynasty. Why does the righteous emphasize order? Isn't it so that more people can cultivate and the central continent can prosper? But what comes after prosperity? Don't forget the tragic experiences at the end of the ancient era. Perhaps that being enjoys reaping lives. When life flourishes once again, he will strike anew. Chu's words echoed the mainstream views of the Bushido cult. He added, the stars above our heads may seem to hang there in the sky, but if your cultivation reaches a certain level and you travel into space, you'll see that they are merely remnants left over from ancient times. In theory, there might be a few that escaped his grasp, real stars, but they will be very few. Chu had said all this in the hope that Liu Yang and the others would sincerely come to revere the undying immortal. Judging by their astonished expressions, it seemed they were ready. All right, I know this information must be overwhelming for you. Go back and let it all sink in. He continued, also, you 3 performed well in the 3 tests. Now is the time for us to recruit capable people. While most others are resting in the dungeons, your cultivation has reached the foundation establishment stage, making you eligible to become deacons. After some thought, I have decided to promote you to deacon status. Chu presented the 3 with 3 plaques, signifying their new positions as deacons of the Bushido cult. In fact, Chu had intended from the start for Liu Yang and the others to become deacons. Only deacons are privy to the full account of what has just transpired. Chu then suggested, by the way, once you're free, you should go visit your fellow cultivators in the dungeons. I've heard the food there is abysmal, bring them something to eat. It'll help build camaraderie. Though demonic cultivators are self-interested, they are also very clear about their grudges. Everyone below is busy scheming against one another, and managing such a group is no easy task for a leader. But what truly worries Chu isn't that his subordinates might clash with you 3 or play tricks on each other. What he fears is that you 3 might end up killing his underlings. Liu Yang beamed broadly, we are all brothers in the same sect. We will unite and work together to resurrect the undying immortal. Please rest assured, branch leader. For some reason, however, after hearing this, Chu still did not seem reassured. Chapter 82, Stone Projectile Hidden Weapons. Hey, branch leader, last time when we had dinner you left without paying. Are you planning to settle the bill now, or are you still owing? Mango asked as they were about to leave. Liu Yang quickly hushed Mango, shut it. We demonic cultivators are allowed to enjoy free meals, it's only natural. Is our branch leader one of those goody two-shoes who always pays for his meals? Meng Jingzhou agreed, exactly. The branch leader said he would treat us, it wasn't his turn to pay. How can you not tell the difference? Branch leader Chu just stared silently. One must admit, when it comes to squeezing money out of people, he isn't as sharp as you 3. Clenching his teeth and fighting back the urge to kill someone, Shu tossed a gold ingot to Mangu and said, "Forget it. You three, get out of here." Manga looked utterly confused. He was simply trying to ask for money normally, but the way Lu Yang and Meng Jingzhou spoke made it seem as if they were speaking on the branch leader's behalf. By the time the three left, it was already deep into the night. Lu Yang gazed up at the brilliant starry sky and sighed. Who would have thought that the stars up there are not real? Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Meng Jingzhou scratched his head. It's not that surprising, really. My grandpa used to tell me that he could give me anything I wanted, even pluck a star from the sky. When I was about 7 or 8, I pointed at a star and said I wanted it. My grandpa once went all the way into space, and when he came back, he put a speck of light the size of a fingernail into my hand, saying, "This is a star," and sure enough, a star was missing from the sky. I even argued with him, saying that stars should be huge, bigger than our courtyard, but Grandpa just smiled mysteriously and said, "Stars are just this small." Then what happened? Lu Yang asked, his curiosity evident. Then people from the Ministry of Punishments showed up, apparently a high-ranking official. They accused my grandpa of stealing natural resources and demanded that he return the star. So, my grandpa returned the light speck, and later that night, a star reappeared in the sky where one had been missing. At the time, I thought something was off, but I couldn't figure it out. Time passed, and I eventually forgot about it. Today, hearing this story, I realized that what I had once held in my hand was truly a star. Truly, the life experiences of the Meng family are unlike ours, Lu Yang remarked, shaking his head as he recalled his own childhood. He remembered that before he traveled through time, he would recite ancient poems like, "High is the perilous tower, 100 feet tall, one can pluck the stars from it, but dare not speak too loudly for fear of startling the beings in the heavens." When he was a child, he could only pluck stars in poems. But Meng Jingzhou really could pluck stars. What a difference that made. Recently, Lu Yang had even considered writing a novel to make some money, something like The Wandering Earth, but in this world, it wouldn't be a planetary engine pushing Earth, it would be a great cultivator pushing the Earth. The three didn't dwell any further on stars and continents, such matters were far too distant for them. At their level of cultivation, they couldn't even move a large stone, let alone a star. Let's get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll go visit our fellow cultivators locked up in the dungeon. The three yawned. Once you reach the foundation establishment stage, you can meditate instead of sleeping, with the same effect, but the three much preferred actual sleep. Meditation? That's for the Jin dance stage. Early the next morning, Lu Yang found Constable Wei. After explaining his purpose, Constable Wei cheerfully issued a pass and told Lu Yang to go visit the dungeon. The moment Lu Yang stepped into the dungeon, he felt as if his spiritual power were being imprisoned. He couldn't muster even a bit of it, and his body felt sluggish. This must be the spirit sealing formation that Constable Wei mentioned. Lu Yang exclaimed in surprise. He hadn't expected the formation to be as powerful as Wei had described. When Constable Wei handed Lu Yang the pass, he had warned him to watch out for the spirit sealing formation in the dungeon. This formation was designed specifically for cultivators. Within its range, a cultivator's power is sealed, preventing the use of any spells. It's meant to stop cultivators from breaking out or staging a jailbreak. The formation in the dungeon was of a very high level, even Jin dance stage cultivators were restricted. There were no exceptions. Lu Yang arrived just as the guards were changing shifts. The daytime guard was yawning, tears almost welling up from his sleepy, dazed eyes as if he hadn't fully woken up. The night guard, about to go off duty and in a good mood, joked, "Old Shou, aren't you usually the most energetic? How come you're so drowsy today? Didn't you do something you shouldn't have last night?" Old Shou's mouth opened wide as he let out a huge yawn before replying, "Lately, I just can't seem to wake up in the mornings. It's hard to get up, not just for me, but even my wife. I even washed my face when I arrived, and I'm still drowsy." The night guard laughed. "Surely you must have done something last night that kept you up. Look at me, I'm not sleepy at all." Old Shou snorted, "You're a cultivator, you're not like me." The night guard waved his hand dismissively. "I've only reached the Qi refinement stage. Whether I ever advance to the second stage is hard to say. What's a cultivator compared to you?" In the dungeon, the rules were that the daytime guards were ordinary people while the night guards were cultivators at the Qi refinement stage. Qi refinement stage guards can stay alert at night and won't be lazy. Cultivators, like ordinary people, do not wish to have their powers suppressed by the spirit sealing formation. However, having only Qi refinement stage guards in the dungeon was clearly insufficient, so additional hidden sentries, cultivators on duty, were arranged outside the dungeon. After the shift change, Lu Yang took the pass and found Old Shou. Old Shou glanced at Lu Yang, did a quick body search, and, finding that he had nothing on him except a lunchbox, let him go. Qi Shulong, known in the nearby counties as a fierce demonic cultivator, believed that after joining the demonic cult he would surely make a name for himself, carve out his own territory, and become the local land emperor. Even now, trapped in the dungeon, his ambitions remained unchanged. Since he was in the dungeon, he resolved to become a prison boss first. His first challenge was that he could not intimidate anyone. Locked in a cell that even those at the Foundation establishment stage could not break out of, and with no weapon at his disposal, the inmates next door never held back with their insults. They either cursed or mocked him, leaving Qi Shulong itching for a fight. At that moment, his cellmate Xianxia came up with an idea. He put a small stone in his mouth and, with a sudden pft, spat it out. The stone flew like a bullet with astonishing force. The damage it could cause was obvious. Xianxia, being a killer by trade, was skilled at using various objects as hidden weapons. Brothers in hardship, now is the time to truly cooperate and break free together, Xianxia said with a strong sense of loyalty. Learn this trick from me. In the dungeon, you'll be unbeatable. Let's rule this place together. Qi Shulong was greatly encouraged and, from dawn till dusk, practiced eagerly to learn how to shoot stones with his mouth. Unfortunately, Qi Shulong lacked natural talent. Though he had plenty of brute strength, he just couldn't master it. You need to store up air in your mouth and spit it out in one quick burst. Speed is key, Xianxia demonstrated, trying hard to teach Qi Shulong. I know, it's just a quick pft, Qi Shulong replied, sounding a bit impatient. No, you're puckering your lips too little. It should be like this, Xianxia insisted. Like this? Qi Shulong asked. Standing outside the cell, Lu Yang watched Qi Shulong and Xianxia both puckering their lips as they practiced. He wondered whether he should speak up to correct them, since the scene could easily be misunderstood. Better to record it first with the recording orb. Chapter 83, Reporting Honestly. Long time no see, I've come to deliver some food. Lu Yang greeted warmly, his friendly demeanor honed from countless hours at the barbecue shop. After more than a month of training, Lu Yang's fake smile had become indistinguishable from a genuine one. Even Meng Jingzhou complimented him on how naturally he smiled. Meanwhile, Qi Shulong, always pouting, heard Lu Yang's voice and suddenly turned, his eyes flashing with hostility. If it were for you calling the constables over to dine, look where you'd be now, he spat. What are you doing here? Qi Shulong's tone was sharp. Every time I see you, you impersonate an examiner to deceive me. Just a few days ago at dinner, you even set a trap. You're full of mischief, and now you come around pretending to deliver food. You've clearly got ulterior motives. Compared to a cold-blooded executioner like me, you're even more despicable. Lu Yang didn't intend to mess with Qi Shulong in the cell. After all, they'd need to help each other out later on. There was no need to burn bridges, and that was what the branch leader had wanted. However, due to his poor hearing, Lu Yang misheard Qi Shulong's words as asking whether he'd been promoted to deacon. What? How did you know I was promoted? But don't get too excited, even you, if you perform well, could become a deacon too. To his surprise, Qi Shulong's information was shockingly accurate, even within the prison walls. After saying that, Lu Yang even pulled out his waist badge to show off. The word deacon was emblazoned in bold letters. Qi Shulong flew into a rage. The heavens must be blind, he bellowed. Lu Yang quickly tried to smooth things over. Hey, don't be mad, the leader even asked me to send you a message. At the mention of branch leader Chu's message, Qi Shulong calmed down a bit, thinking that Chu must hold him in high regard to send a message on his behalf. What did he say? He asked. He said you'd better work on building a good relationship with me. That enraged Qi Shulong further. I'd sooner die than be on friendly terms with you, he roared. Seeing that Qi Shulong stubbornly refused to heed the leader's wishes, Lu Yang sighed and left after leaving behind some food. The other prisoners, having caught a whiff of the food, drooled. After all, such delicious fare was rarely seen behind these bars. To everyone else, Lu Yang's demeanor was warm and encouraging. He urged them to reform while in prison so that when they got out they could start afresh and contribute to the welfare of the central continent. His words were laced with genuine concern. One might even think they were going to be locked up for 10 or 8 years. After their release, Lu Yang reported honestly to branch leader Chu about the situation. I went to visit Qi Shulong in the dungeon with some food. I explained that there had been some misunderstandings between us. After all, we're all fellow cultivators and we'll have to interact in the future. It's best to maintain good relations for the sake of our work. I stressed that this was your instruction and that if he performed well, he could be promoted to deacon just like me. Who knew then that Qi Shulong would fly into such a rage, cursing that whoever made me a deacon must be blind, and that even if he died, he'd never be on good terms with you. I can't recall his exact words, but that was the gist of it. Chu's eyes suddenly turned cold. He said, "Who's blind?" Lu Yang immediately bowed, looking up cautiously at Chu with utmost deference. That man's position is too high, saying such things would be a grave insult. I dare not repeat it. Chu already had his answer. All right, I understand. You may go. Lu Yang sighed inwardly, thinking Qi Shulong really has no filter, he'll blurt out anything. Please, branch leader, don't let him say these things were my words. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I can't be sure. Chu impatiently waved his hand. He knew all too well what was going on. After Lu Yang left, Chu pounded his jade chair and snorted coldly, what a Qi Shulong daring to say I'm blind. During the day, as usual, Meng Jingzhou went out shopping, Manga trained in the backyard, and Lu Yang was busy doing laundry. Lu Yang's clothes were ordinary, not the immaculate kind. Damn it, why can't I master the clothing purification spell? Lu Yang muttered, vigorously rubbing his clothes. Among the three, only he needed to wash his garments. When I have enough money, I'm definitely buying clothes that never need washing. Not long ago, he had asked Meng Jingzhou to teach him the clothing purification spell. Although Meng Jingzhou himself couldn't perform it, he did have a little book of everyday minor spells secretly slipped to him by his sister before she left. The book recorded a spell called the Clothing Purification Spell. As the name implies, it's a spell that can make clothes spotless, simple, and easy to learn. The three gathered together to practice. Meng Jingzhou and Manga were the first to master it. A refreshing surge of spiritual energy descended from above, and their filthy clothes turned instantly white as snow, as if brand new. Both Meng Jingzhou and Manga were delighted. Working at the barbecue shop often meant getting their clothes dirty, which was a real hassle. Given Meng Jingzhou's status, he naturally owned refined garments, magical items that stayed clean automatically. But such high-quality clothing would immediately reveal his illustrious background, which wasn't ideal for undercover work within the demonic cult. Lu Yang's talent for magic was well known. He too mastered the spell, though his result was rather unexpected. After chanting the clothing purification spell, as the space twisted, a brand new set of clothes appeared out of thin air. Lu Yang was silent for a long moment, fuming internally and at a loss for where to begin cursing. Chronologically, this was the first space-type spell he had ever mastered, a significant milestone. In terms of innovation, it was an improvement upon the clothing purification spell, practically creating a new kind of spatial magic. Logically, it made no sense at all. When Lu Yang saw that the collar bore a label reading for so-and-so, he realized that these clothes were most likely custom-made by a tailor, ordered by someone who hadn't even arrived yet, but which he had inadvertently summoned using his spatial spell. Why did my version of the clothing purification spell directly summon a new outfit? What would happen if I cast a clothing cleansing spell? Lu Yang fumed, feeling as though the heavens themselves were deliberately limiting his magical talent despite his brilliance. Obviously, he couldn't wear someone else's clothes. And since he didn't even know who the owner was, he couldn't return them either. Ever the helpful sort, Meng Jingzhou offered to cast the genuine clothing purification spell to wash Lu Yang's clothes. After several attempts, it ended in failure. The clothing purification spell can only cleanse one's own garments. Lu Yang couldn't, for the sake of washing, strip off his clothes and let Meng Jingzhou wash them, then have Meng Jingzhou wear them after washing. In the end, he had no choice but to wash his own clothes properly. After washing them, Lu Yang wanted to hang his clothes out the window to dry. In a careless moment, the clothesline slipped and it looked as though it was about to crash down onto a passerby's head. Watch out! Unexpectedly, the passerby was incredibly agile and sidestepped the falling clothesline. Lu Yang quickly hurried downstairs and discovered that the passerby was an acquaintance, a disciple of the Moon Laurel Immortal Palace from Songs On who had once helped him take down a tiger. Her name was Lan Ting. It had been over a month. How was it that she was still here? Lu Yang wondered in confusion. Lan Ting lowered her gaze, silently staring at the fallen clothesline, her brows slightly furrowed as if deep in thought. Curious, Lu Yang asked, "What are you thinking about?" Without hesitation, Lan Ting blurted out, "I'm wondering why this clothesline doesn't fall upward toward the sky, but instead drops straight down. Could it be that some invisible force is holding everything down?" Lu Yang was speechless. If you're interested in more cutting-edge tech, check out a friend's novel on black technology. It's nearly 10,000 orders strong. Chapter 84, Lan Ting's Secret Mission. Lu Yang, off to the side, remarked, "This kind of invisible force is everywhere, call it universal gravitation, right?" Lan Ting found the voice familiar and looked up to see Lu Yang. "Oh, so it's you," she said. "Come in and speak," Lu Yang urged, worried that Lan Ting might inadvertently reveal her true identity. Lan Ting, stunningly beautiful and delicately poised at the doorway, naturally drew attention, making it all too easy for anyone with ill intent to eavesdrop on their conversation. As soon as she entered, she noticed the spirit ghosts diligently threading skewers and immediately recognized that these were the ones left behind by the tiger demon. The two spirit ghosts, upon seeing Lu Yang and Lan Ting come in together, silently picked up a basin of meat and a set of skewers, then sat at a corner table and resumed their work. Watching their skillful movements, Lan Ting even thought that perhaps in life these ghosts had always worked like this. In the backyard, Mangu, alerted by the commotion, ceased his training and made his way into the main hall. Meanwhile, after a day of idly wandering, Meng Jingzhou burst through the door, exclaiming, "Have you heard? Yanjiang County has its very own festival called the Spring Harvest Festival. In just half a month, there will be spring outings, mountain hikes, and water excursions, and at night a grand poetry feast with recitations and merrymaking. It's going to be a real blast. People from nearby counties will come along too. Local residents in Yanjiang even get a 3-day holiday," someone added. "I also heard that every year during those days the brothels hike their prices sky high and make a killing. What do you say, should we launch a big promotion, maybe a 2-month anniversary sale or something like that?" Meng Jingzhou's remark proved that he wasn't simply out for fun but was also gathering intel, though this particular tidbit didn't really help the three of them. Manga's eyes lit up and he was about to speak when he caught a glimpse of Lu Yang's impassive gaze. He fell silent immediately. Meng Jingzhou then noticed Lan Ting and, quite surprised, said, "I remember you, you're Lan Ting from the Moon Laurel Immortal Palace, aren't you? They had been staying here for over a month, not for the sake of running a barbecue shop, I mean for infiltrating the demonic cult, so what was Lan Ting doing here?" "Indeed, it's me," Lan Ting replied softly. Lan Ting also found Lu Yang and his companions intriguing. She had been in Yanjiang County for over a month and had heard of the famed barbecue shop, but being naturally inclined toward quiet and disliking noisy places, she had never visited before. Today, while passing by chance, she realized that this barbecue shop was run by someone she knew, and moreover, by disciples of an immortal sect. It appeared that these three were genuinely working hard to establish something significant in Yanjiang County. Could it be that the Wendao sect's assignments, in addition to subduing demons, also involve running profitable businesses? Given the Wendao sect's reputation, it wouldn't be entirely out of the question. Lan Ting recalled that some senior sisters had mentioned that among the rewards for exchanging contribution points at the Wendao sect, there was even a 1-day experience with the sect leader, a perk that none of the other 4 immortal sects offered. "Have you been in Yanjiang County for so long because you're on a mission? If you need anything, just speak up. We have well-connected constables here, and there are people in the dungeons too," Lu Yang said enthusiastically. "After all, as part of the 5 great immortal sects, we should help one another." On the surface, Lu Yang and his 2 claim they control everything in Yanjiang County. They present themselves as earnest locals who've even helped Constable Wei catch criminals, and the constables often gather for meals here. In secret, however, they are prized demonic cultivators favored by the Yanjiang branch leader, and their true identities are as core disciples of the Wendao sect. When it comes to background, no one can match them. Lan Ting fell silent. She had come here on a secret mission and was not supposed to interact with outsiders. Otherwise, after helping Lu Yang fight the tiger, she wouldn't have merely taken 2 tiger skins as a token and left. Now, after more than a month with no progress, she was growing anxious. In these 3, she saw a potential opportunity. Perhaps they could help her. After a brief pause, Lan Ting took 2 deep breaths to steady herself and then, with great solemnity, said to the 3, "I'm currently on a secret mission. Whatever I say today must not be passed on. You must keep it to yourselves. My safety depends on it. And please, do not be surprised by what you're about to hear." The 3 straightened up, taking her words seriously. "I am to infiltrate the Bushio cult as an undercover agent." The 3 blinked in unison, thinking they must be hearing things. Lan Ting continued, "This is reliable intelligence obtained through special channels by our Moon Laurel Immortal Palace. Recently, all 4 major demonic cults have planned large-scale recruitment drives. The Yaoang cult has already finished recruiting, and the other 3 are in the process. In Yanjiang County, there is a branch of the Bushio cult called the Yanjiang branch. Its branch leader is shrouded in mystery. No one even knows his surname. Among all the branches of the Bushio cult, the Yanjiang branch ranks rather low. Its members generally have lower cultivation levels, which makes it ideal for someone at the foundation establishment stage like me to infiltrate. With proper planning, it might even be possible to work one's way into the higher echelons of the Yanjiang branch. The senior sisters in our sect are too powerful and too conspicuous, and their reputations in the outside world make them unsuitable for undercover work. After much discussion, this mission was assigned to me." Lan Ting's mention of the senior sisters' fame referred to how extraordinarily beautiful they were, often appearing in certain banned texts to satisfy the fantasies of some men. She sighed, "But I've been in Yanjiang County for over a month and still haven't found the location of the Yanjiang branch, nor do I know if the tests have concluded. I hope there's still time." Lan Ting then looked at the 3 with eyes full of hope, especially at the very reliable Lu Yang, hoping that they could offer her assistance. The 3 silently took out the waist badges given by the branch leader. The characters for Deacon were emblazoned prominently. "Sorry, but we're already members of the Bushio cult," they said. Lan Ting's eyes widened in shock. "Oh, don't be alarmed. What we mean is that we successfully infiltrated the Bushio cult," Lu Yang quickly added. Lan Ting relaxed a bit. She had feared that the three had defected, but it turned out they were merely undercover, though that still didn't quite add up. "How exactly did you get into the Bushio cult?" Lu Yang looked somewhat uneasy. "How should I put it? We just participated in the tests and passed them smoothly." Meng Jingzhou said proudly, "We performed exceptionally well during the cultist selection. The Bushio cult considered us highly suitable for the demonic cult and chose us." Manga didn't quite understand what was so admirable about that. Lu Yang then explained in plain language he had gone to the Tiger Demon's lair to find a letter from Qin Yuanhao. Based on that letter, he located Qin Yuanhao, which then led him to learn about the recruitment of cultists and the location of the Yanzhang branch. Lan Ting was filled with regret. "If only I had followed you, Lu Yang, back then. I've wasted over a month and haven't even found the entrance to the Yanzhang branch, while others have already infiltrated to the higher levels. You should be able to recruit ordinary cultists just like Qin Yuanhao did. Can you include me in your group?" Lan Ting asked hopefully. Lu Yang shook his head. "Ordinary cultists don't have access to the secrets of the Bushio cult. You must undergo the tests organized by the Bushio cult headquarters. To be honest, I don't think you'll pass. The chances of your identity being exposed are pretty high." Lan Ting lowered her gaze in disappointment. Lu Yang continued, "But we can fabricate an identity for you. Say you're a distant relative of mine who has come to join me. You can work at the barbecue shop on the surface, and when we move, you can assist us from the sidelines. That would count as fulfilling part of the mission." "Really?" Lan Ting asked, surprised at such an opportunity. Manga was also pleasantly surprised that the barbecue shop had finally recruited someone new. Lu Yang nodded. "Of course. As someone at the Foundation establishment stage, you have significant combat potential that would greatly help us. The only problem is that you're too eye-catching. You'll need to disguise yourself. By the way, do you know any transformation techniques? If not, I can teach you." Chapter 85, Tofu Shop on Qianmen Street. Lan Ting, upon seeing Lu Yang finish a set of Xianxia fist moves and transform into Mango's likeness, silently took out a yellow talisman paper. "I might as well draw a transformation talisman myself. No wonder the Immortal sect is famous both for its imaginative ideas and its mastery of spells. Using fist techniques to mimic transformation magic requires a profound understanding of sorcery. It must be that our fellow cultivator Lu Yang's comprehension of magic has reached the level where he sees through the form of spells and techniques, directly grasping their essence. Among those of our level, Lan Ting believes no one surpasses Lu Yang in magical attainments." That reminded Lu Yang previously when Lan Ting took the tiger skin, it was for the purpose of talisman crafting. It seems she is quite accomplished in the art of runemaking. Pointing to her eyes, Lan Ting said, "My eyes possess a mysterious nature. I'm exceptionally sensitive to patterns. I can discern the core of runes and spot the focal points of formations. I was born with a talent for creating talismans and arrays. However," she added modestly, "my energy is limited. I devote my main focus to talisman crafting, and I only have a superficial understanding of formations." Though she spoke modestly, her talent was nothing short of extraordinary, a gift destined to carry her far in the fields of runes and formations envied by countless masters of the craft. In no time, Lan Ting finished drawing a transformation talisman and affixed it to her body. In an almost magical instant, her breathtaking beauty shifted to an ordinary appearance. And so, the barbecue shop welcomed a new employee. 2 days after Lan Ting joined the barbecue shop, business continued as busily as ever. With the addition of a new staff member, the workload for the original 3 lightened considerably. Lu Yang noticed that Manga seemed a bit unhappy, so while serving dishes to customers, he reached out with his mental sense. "Did something happen? You don't seem very cheerful." Manga nodded. "Did you notice, Lu? In the past few days, the number of customers at our barbecue shop has dropped. I tallied up the income from these days, it really has decreased." Lu Yang was taken aback. He hadn't noticed such a change. Is it because of Lan Ting? One would think that adding a female employee would boost business. No, in fact, the decline started even before Lan Ting arrived. "I haven't figured out why. Something must be wrong somewhere," Manga replied, still deep in thought about the problem. Lu Yang wasn't too bothered. He even wished the shop had fewer customers. "All right, you keep thinking on that. I'm off to deliver some food." About a month ago, on Meng Jingzhou's suggestion, the barbecue shop had launched a takeout service. By day, they'd place a box at the door where anyone could write down the skewers they wanted, along with a delivery time and address, and by night, the 3 would randomly handle deliveries. Today, it was Lu Yang's turn. In recent nights, Lu Yang hadn't ventured out, but this time he found the streets a bit emptier than usual. Perhaps that was the reason behind the drop in customer flow, he mused. Let me see. Where am I delivering to this time? Xianmen Street Tofu Shop. When Xiangyu had long heard about a popular new barbecue shop in the neighborhood, she was eager to sample it, wondering if it was as delicious as the legends claimed. However, ever since her husband passed away and she inherited his tofu shop, she rarely went out at night. Not that she meant to brag, when Xiangyu, with her fair skin and exquisite beauty, was well aware of how many would covet her, making it very dangerous for her to be out alone. Later, upon learning that the barbecue shop offered a takeout service, she wrote down what she wanted to eat on a piece of paper and dropped it into the box outside the shop. These past few days she had felt very drowsy, and today even more so. Before the skewers could be delivered, she succumbed to her fatigue and went to bed early. She expected that the shop's staff would eventually wake her up. Lu Ji was a notorious petty thief who had recently been giving the constables a headache. He often crept into people's homes at night, stealing money while his victims slept, then quickly vanished, leaving hardly any clues. When the constables questioned nearby residents, they all claimed they'd been fast asleep and hadn't noticed anything unusual. This time, Lu Ji set his sights on the tofu shop on Qianmen Street. The shop's owner, a famous, striking widow, was renowned for her tofu, and in recent years her profits had made the neighboring shopkeepers green with envy. Lu Ji was incredibly agile, like a monkey. Silently, he scaled the roof, twisted his body, and opened a second-floor window. They should be asleep by now, he thought confidently. Fortune had favored him. He had come into possession of a yellow paper rune that induced deep sleep. When pasted on the outside of a house, it would affect everyone within a 50-meter radius, lulling them into a deep slumber. This trick never failed. Creeping carefully and holding his breath, Lu Ji saw the beautiful woman lying in bed. A mischievous smile of triumph appeared on his face. Then he turned and crept over to a cabinet, hoping to find valuables there. After all, in his experience, women tend to stash their prized possessions in such places. Nothing? Lu Ji frowned and then turned to glance at the spot where the tofu shop's owner resided. Since there was nothing there, it must be under the bed. He cautiously crouched down and peered under the bed. His heart skipped a beat. Under the bed was a human face. Gee, ghost? Lu Ji exclaimed. Xianxia was a notorious flower stealer who had recently been troubling the constables. He habitually hid under the beds of single women, and when they slept, he would emerge stealthily to defile them. However, sometimes he would encounter a situation where the woman was having an affair, and in those cases he would simply hide under the bed and wait. This time, Xianxia's target was the tofu shop on Qianmen Street. The shop's owner, this famous, alluring widow, had reportedly ensnared the hearts or souls of many. As usual, Xianxia hid under the bed early. When night fell, he planned to have his illicit rendezvous with the tofu shop's owner. I'm so drowsy, Xianxia murmured. Never before had he felt as sleepy as he did that night. In the past, the longer he waited, the more energetic he became. But tonight, an overwhelming sleepiness washed over him. His eyelids were in a fierce battle, and though he tried several times to force them open, he couldn't resist the drowsiness and soon fell asleep. A sudden scream shattered the silence. Someone appeared to be shouting about ghosts or something. Startled awake, Xianxia jerked his eyes open and saw Lu Ji sprawled under the bed and staring at him in terror. In a flash, Xianxia lunged, clamped a hand over Lu Ji's mouth, and crawled out from under the bed. With his other hand, he drew a dagger from behind his waist and pressed it against Lu Ji's neck. Then Xianxia noticed when Xiangyu huddled in a ball on the bed, trembling uncontrollably. Clearly, when Xiangyu had also been awakened by Lu Ji's screams. Get up, you too! What kind of cursed day is this? Xianxia barked. Cursing under his breath, Xianxia quickly fetched some rope and bound Lu Ji, planning that once he'd finished his unspeakable act with Xiangyu, he would kill them both. At that moment, a knock sounded from downstairs. Is anyone there? I'm here to deliver takeout. Xianxia snorted. Today's luck was truly abysmal. He bound Lu Ji, then ordered Xiangyu and himself to go downstairs. Using his dagger to threaten Xiangyu, he hissed, "You make sure those outside leave." Everyone in Yanjiang County knew that the tofu shop's charming widow lived alone. If he were to order people outside to leave using a man's voice, they would surely become suspicious. Just leave the food at the door, I'll go get it in a bit, Xiangyu pleaded softly. No way, you haven't paid yet, came the reply from outside. Xiangshua's face twisted into a snarl. If you're courting death, then you can't blame anyone else. That concludes today's epic story from Xianxia Webnovel Audio. If you found the journey as thrilling as we did, please hit like, subscribe to our channel, and enable notifications for more mystical adventures. We're excited to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below about your favorite part. See you in the next chapter.